Chapter 1685. As an eternal rank existence, Wu Xin controlled the cosmos godbrain. He had a kind of disposition as if everything was under his control. Since ancient times, he had seen too many incredible epics. He had seen all kinds of big and small scenes, and he had fought with all kinds of peerless experts and geniuses. In ancient times, some cultivators with only 100 years of cultivation could compete with old monsters who had cultivated for thousands of years. These were geniuses, and these geniuses were later killed by him and made into specimens. Therefore, collecting specimens of these geniuses became a small hobby that Wu Xin hid in secret. But now, a baby girl who understood the great way had appeared in front of him. This little hobby that had been dusty for many years was stimulated again at this moment. A baby who knew how to use the great way at birth. This shocked Wu Xin to the extreme. He was full of excitement, as if he could already see Wang Wan being made into a perfect specimen by him. This was no longer a genius. It was a genius that had never appeared since ancient times, and he had never had the experience of making such a genius into a specimen. The strong special collecting hobby made Wu Xin go crazy again at this moment. Even if he didn't say a word or move, the terrifying aura released from his body was enough to make people tremble. Wu Xin, your way of thinking is very dangerous. You have no idea what you are facing. Jin Deng Monk, as one of the ancient ones who knew Wu Xin well, advised him. There was no need to read his mind. Just by looking at Wu Xion's eyes and the aura that kept surging up, Jin Deng Monk knew that this person's collecting hobby was acting up again. In the past, because of this hobby, Wu Xian had offended many people. Therefore, every time he fancied a heavenly genius and wanted to use him as a specimen, he would definitely prepare for battle. Even the clan of this heavenly genius would be annihilated. This was to prevent his descendants from seeking revenge. Now, ancient times had passed. The moment Wu Xin saw Wang Wan, Jin Deng Monk didn't expect that a strange hobby would be aroused again. But this time, it seemed to be different from ancient times. Compared to Wang Wan, those peerless geniuses of the ancient era were not even on the same level. Moreover, behind Wang Wan stood that terrifying man. But it was clear that Wu Xin hadn't considered that much. His eyes were burning, and in the next second, he chose to attack Wang Wan. The instantaneous killing intent was shocking. Boom! At this moment, the ground of the supreme world trembled, and rays of golden, auspicious light burst forth. An exquisite half-body ancient god with 8 faces and 8 arms appeared out of thin air, wearing a suit of golden armor. One of his arms held a grayish-green ancient sword. With just a wave of his arm, a powerful sword chi swept out, separating the battlefield between Wu Xin and the people of Battle Sect, leaving behind a deep ravine. At the same time, it also dissolved Wu Xion's palm energy. This was Xiang Yi's unique 8-armed ancient god. The moment it appeared, it attracted everyone's attention. Magical rings flowed around its body, and it was filled with an immortal aura. Wu Xian raised his eyebrows and stared at the 8-armed ancient god. He was surprised to find that it was an existence that he had never seen before. This 8-armed ancient deity from the other side gave off a type of otherworldly feeling. When it appeared, golden and purple light surged around it, as if it connected to the underworld. It was extremely unordinary and possessed a tremendous pressure. Yellow Springs Chaos Tao. So that's how it is. Wu Xian observed for a long time, and suddenly realized the origin of this 8-armed ancient god. This was the power of the Yellow Springs Chaos Tao. Back then, a genius who was made into a specimen by him naturally comprehended this Tao method. Logically speaking, this Tao method should have been extinct and should not appear again. Unexpectedly, that person found his successor before he died. No wonder when he wanted to steal this Tao method back then, he couldn't find any memories of this Tao method in that youth's body. Interesting. At this moment, Wu Xian spoke lightly. His eyes were piercingly cold, and there was a kind of killing intent in them. A baby girl who knew how to use the Tao not long after being born, the only koi in the cultivation world that gathered destiny, and this man who inherited the Yellow Springs Chaos Dao. These were all the best subjects that he could use to make specimens out of. Today, all of you here will become part of my collection. Boom! With Wu Xin as the center, the God Brain's powerful oppressive force was released in waves, and everyone present felt their qi and blood churn. Monk Jin Deng had told them at the beginning how strong a fully activated God Brain was. But it wasn't until this moment that they truly understood how oppressive it was. Qinzong and Xiang Yi cried out in their hearts at the same time. It could only be said that this was Ling Jinren's strongest enemy in this world. It was only in Wang Ling's universe that they could run into a boss of this level, who could almost be called a monster. They were now at the top of their respective worlds, and the most powerful enemy they had ever encountered wasn't even 1% as strong as Wu Xin in front of them. Is this the Ancient One? At that moment, both of them were in a trance, and felt that this was too terrifying. Even though Xiang Yi had summoned this 8-armed ancient god and was using his own abilities to resist the pressure, this ancient god that could shake the heavens and earth in his original world felt as fragile as a piece of paper in front of this ancient being. Be careful, everyone, the Ancient One is about to make a move, Loopy Toad said with a pale face. As an existence that had just been bathed in chaos and had been reborn to become a divine beast, it went without saying that it was very sensitive to the power of chaos. At that moment, Wu Xin just stood there, and in Loopy Toad's view, the chaos chi surging around him was even more terrifying than the chaos calamity back then. At that moment, the immortal battle between the Ancient One and Battle Sect was about to begin. If they couldn't stop Wu Xin in this supreme world, the entire universe might face a catastrophe. For this kind of specimen maniac with a special hobby, it wasn't just geniuses who could be made into specimens. All the strange creatures and planets in the world, as long as they caught his eye, they could be collected. All of you know nothing about power. All you can do is do something useless. At that moment, Wu Xion's voice rang out in the minds of everyone in Battle Sect. It was just a light sentence, but it carried with it a terrifying change, as if it could reach all the way back to ancient times. Behind him, all kinds of dazzling light were superimposed and released, and countless black ribbons connected to his back before they converged to form a massive purple-gold rudder in front of him. I want to show you who is at the helm of the universe, Wu Xian said. He raised his hand to touch the rudder, and with a light turn, the air behind him was instantly annihilated and blurred, as if countless karma and nomological laws had been twisted and severed by this turn. This kind of oppressive feeling was terrifying. At that moment, everyone in Battle Sect was under immense pressure. Ajwa, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, and Loopy Toad were shaken by this tremendous force and spat out blood. On the other side, Zhou Zi, who was wearing multiple layers of long johns, shivered a little at this scene after being shot out like a bullet. But he and Wang Wan were the only two people present who were unscathed. Chapter 1686. Wang Wan had the power of Shadow Dao to protect her body. That kind of power of learning from the weak and using the weak to counter the weak was equivalent. Shadow Dao was a great Dao that grew stronger with the strong. Only a few things could not be replicated by Shadow Dao. Although Anwan was still very young, she could distinguish between good and evil. In the face of such an arrogant primordial one, she could naturally sense the malice emanating from that evil god brain. Girl, don't look at me like that. The universe is about to fall into chaos. If I can obtain your power as the master of great Dao, you might be able to help me set things right. At that moment, the heartless patriarch held the rudder in his hand. Behind him was the void that was constantly being destroyed and reformed, and cracks spread out in all directions like a rainbow spiderweb. Although Wang Wan was the master of Shadow Dao and the person whom the heartless patriarch considered to be the most difficult person to deal with, as the rudder of the universe, he was completely uninterested. This rudder of chaos was the most powerful chaos magic weapon he had discovered when he had traveled through the chaos, and it had 60% of the power of chaos. It could almost be said to be an existence that could insta-kill all existing chaos magic weapons. At that time, Heartless had known that as long as he controlled this rudder, he would control the entire universe. But given his age at that time, he was already half a foot in the grave. Even if he constantly replaced his mechanized organs, it wouldn't be of any use, since there was no way to prevent the aging of the soul. Thus, Heartless came up with a solution. That was to find a successor, then turn the God Brain's inheritance ceremony into a scam, and finally wait for his resurrection. With a younger body and a younger soul, plus a 100% activated God Brain, it would be a piece of cake to use this new body to control the rudder of chaos. Full rudder right, he shouted softly, and as he flipped the rudder, the entire horizon of the supreme world started to tilt to the right. Everyone from Battle Sect stood on the spot, unsteady. As a unit of combat strength, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in an even more tragic state. As the ground turned sideways, his entire body directly collided with the chaos cracks, and he was instantly swallowed up by them and turned into flying ashes. Then, everyone saw the ashes that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had turned into reassemble in front of them at a speed visible to the naked eye. As expected of a Senior Immortal, the title of Great Death-Courting Senior has finally been established. Odd Joy sweated profusely in his heart. He had long since heard that Wang Ling had customized a set of courting Death Dao scripture for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's characteristics. In any case, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had the soul suppression ring, which Wang Ling had given him, and which had already been strengthened to plus 999, so he wouldn't die no matter how badly injured he was. This courting Death Dao scripture was very suitable for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. It was said that every time he unlocked a new method of death, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's battle strength would rise to a higher level. Sure enough, after Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal turned into ashes and reformed into human form, his aura was much stronger than before. "I died, but I became stronger," Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said excitedly. Then in the next second, boom, bam, as the Heartless Ancestor steered the ship, a bolt of primordial divine thunder fell from the sky and blew Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal into bloody foam again. Forget it, there's no need to worry about the true monarch. The perfected lord was constantly becoming stronger. We still have to think of a way to destroy this ship's rudder. Monk Jean Deng said, a complicated look on his fair and handsome face. He never thought that he would meet the Heartless Ancestor under these circumstances. After not seeing him for so many years, he felt that Wu Xin had changed a lot. At the very least, the righteous Wu Xin from before was gone. It wasn't just the epic of the universe that had changed, but also people's hearts. "Monk, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no way you can break this ship's rudder. You should know very well in your heart." Wu Xin laughed. "To be honest, the few of you aren't good enough for me. You can barely be considered part of my collection." As he said this, he quickly turned the ship's rudder, and a ripple of spirit power combined with the power of primordial chaos spread out in all directions. Monk Jean Deng set up a Buddhist light barrier to block it. Bang! The two ripples collided with each other, creating a vast ocean of fluctuations and a violent roar. A new cosmic black hole formed at the point of impact, an endless power of primordial chaos. Lightning and spirit power were sucked in to form a terrifying storm. "Wu Xin, it's none other than you who threw the universe into chaos," Monk Jean Deng said with a frown as he tried to hit the ship's rudder with Buddha's palm. Standing on the spot, Wu Xin sneered when he heard this, completely ignoring Monk Jean Deng's methods. Boom! He was even more ruthless as he connected his god brain to the ship's rudder in front of him. He didn't need to raise his hand at all, as if everything was under his control. The monk's Buddha's palm was extremely powerful as it fell from the sky, but the Heartless Ancestor didn't put up any defense at all. The moment the palm was about to fall, he tilted the ship's rudder to the right. In the end, it was as if someone had pressed a remote control button on Buddha's palm as it shifted from its original position to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the spot. Poor Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who had just been resurrected, was turned into flying ashes by this palm. He can actually do this. But right now, everyone had no time to care about this unit of measurement that was constantly resurrecting. All their attention was on the rudder of chaos that the heartless ancestor had taken out. No one had thought that the rudder of chaos would actually be so powerful that it could actually change its trajectory. With this rudder, the Wuxin clan patriarch would be an invincible powerhouse. But Buddha's palm was, after all, just an ordinary spell. It was a supreme Buddhist spell that the monk had comprehended himself, and had nothing to do with the great Tao. Thus, the monk was still a little unconvinced. The second Buddha's palm quickly struck toward the heartless ancestor, and this time it contained the power of 1,000 strands of heavenly Tao. Monk Jin Deng didn't believe that with the power of heavenly Tao, this palm could still be controlled by this strange rudder. But the result was beyond everyone's expectations once again. The rudder was too strange. As it moved, it actually exuded a terrifying aura of the beginning of the primordial world, and the powerful chaotic qi was as vast as the sea, which submerged the entire supreme world on the spot. Before Monk Jin Deng's second palm could strike, its trajectory was changed to that of Wang Yuan. Furthermore, as the rudder changed its trajectory, the palm actually became stronger. How can this be? The power of the rudder was already beyond everyone's expectations. Just as Wang Yuan was about to take up a defensive stance, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of her. The man slowly crouched down, picked up little girl Yuan with one hand, and very skillfully placed her on his shoulder. Little girl Yuan also obediently lay there like a pendant. His movements were so slow that everyone could clearly see his every move, but at the same time, they were unbelievably fast. In the next second, the man came back to his senses and gently exhaled in front of him. Buddha's palm, which had been strengthened by the rudder, was once again reflected back with 1,000% more power. Chapter 1687. The most important and unique ability of the Chaos Rudder was that it could instantly attach a specific invisible antenna to all attacks, which could then be remotely controlled. Whether it was a heavenly Tao spell, an ordinary spell, a magic weapon, or a spirit sword attack, everything could be controlled by the Chaos Rudder. However, when the Heartless Patriarch used the rudder to change the original trajectory of his palm strike to attack Wang Yuan, this man who had suddenly appeared actually just exhaled and changed the trajectory he had set. Furthermore, it was 1,000% more powerful, which was beyond the Heartless Patriarch's understanding for a moment. This man didn't have a rudder. Why could he change the trajectory of spell? For a moment, the Heartless Patriarch's mind was a little muddled. He used the rudder to change Wang Ling's trajectory again, and in the end, this Buddha's palm was more than 1,000 times more powerful than before as it blasted into the distance. In the distance, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the flat ground, illuminating the entire supreme world. A hole was created in the sky by this palm, and countless galaxies hung down from the hole, sprinkling down a terrifying multicolored light with the power of chaos. This multicolored light was extremely gentle and beautiful, but anyone below the ancestor realm who touched it would instantly be burned to ashes. Everyone couldn't help feeling awe in the face of such a scene. Only Wang Ling and Wang Yuan were unmoved. Wang Ling wasn't afraid of this to begin with. Besides, the scene in front of them wasn't too big of a deal. While the Heartless Patriarch was a very powerful immortal, in Wang Ling's opinion, his battle strength might not even be as strong as that of the Grave God. When he picked up Wang Yuan, the only thing he felt was that Yuan was hungry. No matter how poor he was, he couldn't be poor in education, and no matter how hungry he was, he couldn't be hungry for his little sister. Little girl Yuan was still growing, and she definitely needed nutrition. So how to fill little girl Yuan's stomach was Wang Ling's #1 problem. Compared with the Grave God last time, there weren't so many tentacle monsters here that could be used as grilled squid material. Furthermore, the Heartless Patriarch in front of him was a mechanized cultivator who had nothing but engine oil and gears in his body. He couldn't feed his own little sister these things. Fortunately, Wang Ling was a clever little devil, and his reaction was very quick. He immediately set his eyes on the starry light in the distance that contained the power of chaos after the Buddha's palm had broken through space. Ordinary people couldn't touch this light, but the siblings could. It was also an excellent material for making milk powder. It contained a huge amount of chaotic energy, which was definitely enough to replenish little girl Wan's stamina. At this moment, the entire place was silent, and it could be said that there was no one there. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling's side as they wondered what he was going to do next. After all, with a normal person's train of thought, they would absolutely not be able to imagine that this deadly chaotic glow could actually be used to make milk powder for Wang Wan to drink. In the next second, Wang Ling activated the power of the king's eye and sucked in all that light. Ling Zhenren, what is he doing? Using the king's eye to gather the chaotic rays? Xiang Yi asked. He's probably preparing for a big move. After all, he's little Master Ling. We can't understand his thinking, said Loopy Toad. Could it be used for something else? Qin Zong asked. At that moment, everyone in Battle Sect was discussing what on earth Wang Ling's move meant. They also didn't understand why he was collecting the chaotic rays in the king's eye. After all, if it was the king's eye that launched a shock wave of its own accord, the destructive power of destroying everything in sight was much more terrifying than the chaotic rays. Thus, there was no need to rely on this method of accumulating power to increase the power of the king's eye. Could Shifu have come up with some new spell? Ajua was full of anticipation. After all, his current opponents were different from those of the past. In the past, his opponents had all been confined to Earth and could be dealt with a single slap. But now, his opponents were all at the universe level. If they weren't born from chaos, then they were the ancient ones who had transcended mortality. One slap was already beyond repair, but the fancy beating could still continue. Ajua felt that Wang Ling's moves had basically never been repeated since he ran into a universe opponent. Every time he faced Wang Ling head-on, he would make new discoveries and experiences. Then, with these new discoveries and experiences, he would either stop thinking forever or turn into dust in the universe. Lying on Wang Ling's shoulder, little girl Wan looked like a soft pastry with a hungry expression on her face. It'll be ready soon, Wang Ling said softly and soothingly telepathically. His face still didn't show much of an expression, but the natural gentleness he exuded toward his little sister still deeply touched Lotus Sun's eyes. In that moment, Lotus Sun was clearly in the inner world, but she felt a faint jealousy in her heart. She knew that this kind of behavior was very childish, but she still couldn't help it. Wang Ling wanted to kill her too much. There were times when Lotus Sun couldn't tell whether this piece of wood was real or fake. He would always inadvertently do something unexpected that was completely unlike his usual style, and it was very natural, especially when he was with little girl Wan. Thus, she began to reflect in the inner world. Maybe there was something about little girl Wan that Wang Ling especially liked. Earlier, Lotus Sun had heard from Father and Mother Wang that little girl Wan would also be going to number 60 high in the future. In other words, she could actually be considered little girl Wan's senior sister. At that moment, Lotus Sun felt that it was very necessary for her to visit the Wang family's small villa in person as a senior sister and improve her relationship with little girl Wan. Although it seemed very shameful to place her hopes on a little girl for a lifetime of happiness, Lotus Sun couldn't care less now. As long as it was useful, it was fine, just as Lotus Sun's imagination was running wild. On the other side, Wang Ling frowned and began to focus his gaze on the chaos rudder in the heartless patriarch's hand. Making milk powder was one thing, but it was, after all, milk powder made from chaotic glow, and a milk bottle that could hold it might have to be of a certain standard. Even if he had enchanted an ordinary milk bottle, it still wouldn't be strong enough. Little girl Wan might crack as she drank. It wouldn't be good if the little girl got scalded. Wang Ling felt that he had never been so considerate as to actually think hard about making milk powder for his little sister. Sure enough, Mother Wang wasn't lying to him. Making milk powder was really a profound subject. So now, he focused all his attention on the chaos rudder. because this was an excellent material for making milk bottles. Chapter 1688. Seeing the look in Wang Ling's eyes, the heartless patriarch finally smiled a little. You know what's good for you, kid? My chaos rudder can attack and defend. No matter how strong you are, it's hard for you to resist the power of my rudder. If you stop now, you and your sister will still have a chance to live. It was clear that the heartless patriarch had yet to understand what kind of players he was facing. After all, most of the Ancient Ones had taken it upon themselves to surpass Tao Ancestor Wang. Now, the heartless patriarch had successfully used some means to revive himself and activate his god brain to 100%. He could transfer his consciousness at any time, which was equivalent to having the ability to live forever. In addition to the various magic treasures that he had accumulated during the ancient times, as well as the ship rudder that had 60% chaotic power, in terms of the strength on paper, the Wuxin ancestor's current strength had already reached the level of Tao Ancestor Wang, even if it did not surpass him. As an ancient one who had set Tao Ancestor Wang as his goal back then, he naturally regarded himself as an invincible existence to be able to reach this level of combat strength. Therefore, he was extremely arrogant and didn't take Wang Ling and Wang Wan seriously at all. He could sense that the teenager and the baby girl standing in front of him weren't ordinary people, but had a variety of great Tao abilities and were more talented than the geniuses he had seen back then. However, because of the foundation he had accumulated over the ages, he didn't believe that these two hotheads, who added up to less than 50 years old, could compete with the foundation he had built up over the ages. I need to show you what the gap is. Facing Wang Ling, the heartless patriarch's mind stirred at that moment, and a strange golden dragon scale appeared in his hand. He muttered an incantation, and the dragon scale jumped in his palm. Then, it rapidly spread out on his body like fish scales, turning into armor. In an instant, his entire body exploded with an incomparably dazzling light, so dazzling that it was dazzling to the eyes. Dragon Emperor Divine Armor? Monk Jin Deng's expression changed instantly when he saw this thing. Although this armor hadn't come from chaos, it had clearly been processed and baptized by chaos. In theory, all magic weapons could be baptized by chaos, and thus gain more power than before. However, this baptism process was risky. If the baptism failed, everything would be in vain, and even the magic weapon could be destroyed, never to return to its owner. But the Golden Lamp monk could tell that the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor in front of him had been baptized more than once. The Dragon Emperor Divine Armor, which had 40% chaotic energy, had been baptized at least 20 times. Therefore, the Golden Lamp monk's face instantly turned cold. He was really surprised by the heartless ancestor's luck and was even more surprised by the appearance of the Dragon Emperor armor. This was the natal magical treasure of Priest Long, who was known as the demonic dragon, one of the ancient 6 heroes. In ancient times, they were publicly acknowledged to be below Tao Ancestor Wang in terms of battle prowess, and they were on par with each other in all aspects. They were the 6 great figures who were evenly matched. They were crowned the 6 heroes of eternity. However, no one had mentioned this epic of the 6 martialists of eternity ever since they had gone into hiding in the universe. There had always been rumors that the immemorial 6 heroes entered the primal chaos vortex in order to search for the true meaning of primal chaos and never returned. The auras and messages of the 6 people also disappeared completely, as if they had disappeared from the universe. In other words, the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor, which originally belonged to Priest Long and should have been a legendary item that had disappeared from the universe, had now reappeared, and it was taken out by the Heartless Ancestor. This made the Golden Lamp monk, who was also an ancient being, feel a little incredulous. Why would the Heartless Ancestor have something that belonged to the 6 heroes of eternity? Could it be that he had seen the 6 heroes after they disappeared? Full of doubts, the Heartless Ancestor sneered again. Monk, you seem to be surprised that I took out this divine armor? Yes. After all, this Dragon Emperor Divine Armor originally belonged to Priest Long, one of the 6 heroes. But it's a pity that such a good thing can only belong to me now, and I still have a lot of it." He laughed arrogantly, and the Dragon Emperor divine armor on his body was shining like a fiery stone, emitting a kind of cosmic red flame, with a kind of extraordinary and amazing power bursting out with a frightening light. Under such strong pressure, the people of the battle sect were almost in a state of defeat, and just setting up a barrier to defend was already very difficult. This Dragon Emperor divine armor was indeed very extraordinary. It gave off a sense of oppression, and when it was worn, it also emitted a kind of chaotic, raging flame. It was a kind of purple-gold cosmic flame that could burn anything that approached it. Wang Ling examined it with the power of the king's eye, and his expression didn't change much. This Dragon Emperor armor was indeed a lot stronger than ordinary toys, but Heartless was still too immature to rely on it to withstand his attack. At that moment, Heartless saw the right opportunity, and his expression turned murderous. His palm and fingers descended from the sky with the kind of power that could crush the sun, the moon, and the stars as he swatted at the siblings. Wang Ling's heart was as calm as an ancient well, but at that moment his eyes inadvertently revealed a murderous glint. He didn't mind Heartless attacking him, but attacking Anwan was out of the question. Anwan was just a newborn child, but the other party was actually so unscrupulous and merciless in the face of such a baby. This already touched his bottom line a little. Even if he had no emotions and didn't know what anger was, this spontaneous feeling of discomfort was already enough reason for him to attack Heartless. According to the old Wang family's latest teachings, an older brother should protect his younger sister unconditionally. He should do his best to put an end to anything that could hurt his younger sister. If he was attacked by gangsters or other lawbreakers, he should fight back with all his might if necessary, regardless of the cost or the consequences. How dare this person offend Ling Jinren like that? He's courting death. In the distance, Qin Zong said angrily when he saw Heartless attack Wang Ling and his sister. His reverence for Wang Ling was in fact no less than arduous. After all, the latter was a man whom Qin Zong revered like a god. Boom! Heartless' palm and fingers fell from the sky and turned into a huge phantom that stretched for thousands of li, making it impossible to see its trajectory clearly. At that moment, Wang Ling raised his hand and countered with a palm strike. At that moment, the powerful force of the palm overflowed from the surface of this supreme world, and the explosive destructive power formed a magic ring that spread out in all directions, with Wang Ling as the center. Wang Long, under the force of Wang Ling's one palm strike, the ground of the entire paramount world actually sank hundreds of feet. Bang! Finally, the Heartless Patriarch, who had attacked Wang Ling and his sister, had a puzzled expression on his face. In the face of the counterattack, he was sent flying all over the sky like a kite without a string, and it took him a long time to stabilize himself. He spat out a mouthful of blood. There was disbelief on the Heartless Patriarch's face. His Dragon Emperor divine armor had actually been smashed by Wang Ling's palm. But if it hadn't been for the Dragon Emperor divine armor protecting him just now, the power of that palm would have pulverized him into powder. Chapter 1689. The Dragon Emperor divine armor had saved his life at this critical moment. If it hadn't been for the armor's protection, the Heartless Patriarch knew that he would have died long ago. In the end, he had underestimated the power of Wang Ling's palm just now. Who would have thought that the power of this palm could actually make the ground of his supreme world sink dozens of feet? This terrifying and ferocious explosive force was so destructive that he couldn't resist it at all and was sent flying on the spot. When he came back to his senses, the Dragon Emperor divine armor, which had been baptized by chaos dozens of times, had already been reduced to dust, and there was no possibility of it being repaired in the distance. Everyone from Battle Sect marveled in their hearts. Although the scene was already within expectations for those who were familiar with Wang Ling, when they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't help feeling shocked. If anyone's mind was blank at that moment, it was none other than Ryoko Kimiya. This was no longer a question of whether you had a lot of questions. Instead, it was a question of whether you had a lot of friends. The shocked expression on Ryoko's face was almost indescribable. It was very much like those exaggerated manga characters. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have been able to imagine how strong Wang Ling was. Is this still the classmate Wang Ling I know? She covered her slightly agape mouth with extreme astonishment as she witnessed the famous scene of Wang Ling smashing the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor with one palm and beating the heartless patriarch to the point of vomiting blood through the visual image shared by Monk Golden Lamp in the inner world. But what surprised her even more was yet to come, because Wang Ling didn't look like he had any intention of holding back at all. His movements were no longer as hesitant as they had been at the beginning, and he took the initiative to launch a new round of attacks. Whoosh! Wang Ling exhaled. This was the essence of primordial qi, a substance derived from the condensation of primordial qi. At that moment, not only had Wang Ling condensed it out of his body, but it was also mixed with a kind of primordial qi, which gave it an incomparably sacred feeling. In an instant, the aura of great Tao filled the whole area, and an incomprehensible voice of the universe rang out from Wang Ling's body. This is impossible. How can this be? At that moment, the heartless patriarch felt his worldview shatter. He couldn't believe that such a voice had actually come from Wang Ling's body. Furthermore, it was the voice of multiple great Tao. This voice, which could only be transmitted in the universe, had actually come from a teenager's body. So what did this mean? This meant that this youth's body might be the embodiment of the universe. Of course, this was just the heartless patriarch's own guess. He could not imagine that such an outrageous thing would happen in front of him. Truly, it was outrageous in the capital. This was a very astonishing sight. When Wang Ling spat out this primordial essence mixed with the power of chaos onto the ground of this supreme world, a great Tao lotus actually appeared out of thin air. Heavenly Tao, Fate Tao, Shadow Tao, Divine Tao, all kinds of great Taos turned into lotus petals that held up this great Tao lotus from the ground. It was only now that everyone from Battle Sect realized that apart from the powers of these great Taos, Wang Ling actually had more great Taos, because this lotus of great Tao had a total of 28 petals. When the great Tao lotus directly rose from the ground, Wang Ling's eyelids twitched because he never thought that he would actually have 28 kinds of great Tao. Could it be that the grand Tao he cultivated and was too powerful, and it suppressed the other grand Taos, causing him to be unable to notice it normally? Although Wang Ling's expression was as tranquil as an ancient well, he was extremely shocked in his heart. He clearly remembered that when he had forced back the Demon World's attack 6 years ago, his great Tao lotus had only had 2 petals. He never thought that today, 6 years later, it would already have 28 petals. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh at such a barbaric growth. But even he didn't expect the great Tao lotus to have already grown to this extent by the time he released it again. For the others, this was naturally even more stunning. When the lotus bud bloomed, a slender and elegant crystal fairy revealed her graceful figure in the heart of the lotus. Her entire body was crystal clear, and her face couldn't be seen. Her extremely graceful body was draped in a thin layer of gauze, and she looked peerless. She was clearly no more than 3 inches tall, but at that moment, she was radiating astonishing spirit power. The moment she opened her eyes, boundless spirit light was released, and a terrible light swept out in all directions, illuminating this supreme world. Don't be presumptuous in my territory. The heartless patriarch couldn't take it anymore. He was well aware of how powerful Wang Ling was, but he couldn't just stand by and watch Wang Ling act presumptuously here. This was clearly his world, and he was the master and god here, but a hothead had turned the tables on him. Didn't he want to lose face? Today, even if I have to pay any price, I will kill you. At that moment, Heartless' state of mind had changed. At first, he had planned to turn Wang Ling and Wang Nuan into specimens for his collection, but now he couldn't care less. He just wanted to do whatever he could to kill them. This great Tao lotus was extraordinary But most of the great Daos weren't Wang Ling's main Daos, so Heartless thought that it might not be as strong as he had imagined. He pushed the fluctuations of the God Brain to the maximum, intending to form a spiritual link with the entire Supreme World. Then, instilled with the vast will of the world, a terrible creature broke through the ground. It had been forcibly summoned by him using the power of the God Brain and the will of the world. It was also a terrible monster that Heartless had created through his continuous research. This tall and sturdy creature had countless faces, and the most obvious one was actually a dragon head with tentacles growing out of it. A long dragon neck stretched out from its bloated body and spewed chaotic flames. It was surrounded by arms and claws, like a combination of all kinds of ultimate creatures, and gave off a strong sense of oppression. Like the great Tao Lotus, this strange multi-faced creature also had the power of multiple great Taos. What's this? Asked Grenade, throwing Senior Immortal. I never thought he would even capture the spirit of Taoist Long's Dharma idol, and also capture so many indescribable creatures from the great Tao sect and combine them together. Monk Golden Lamp was equally horrified, but when he turned to look at Wang Ling's calm expression on the battlefield, he was completely relieved. Indeed, by finding creatures with different great Taos and then combining them, they could indeed achieve a similar effect as the great Tao Lotus in Wang Ling's hand. But the difference was that these great Taos weren't the Heartless Patriarch's own. This person still didn't know anything about power. At that moment, Wang Wan, who had been lying on Wang Ling's shoulder the whole time, was also eager to try it out. She raised her hands and gave instructions as she spoke to the fairy that the great Tao Lotus had evolved into. What is Spiritual Master Wan saying? Most people in Battle Sect didn't understand. Only Loopy Toad understood. Little Girl Wan is telling that Tao Lotus Fairy to start fighting everyone. Chapter 1690. The aura released by these lotuses of great Tao was so astonishing that it was beyond ordinary people's imagination. Although the dragon head monstrosity in front of him had the same composition as Fairy Tao Lotus, the difference in aura was still very obvious, especially after Tao Lotus Fairy entered battle mode at Wang Wan's command. As the fairy, who was only a few inches tall, swung her lotus dress, a powerful aura of great Tao spread out in an instant, shaking the entire world and affecting the nomological laws of this supreme world. The aura under the lotus dress was endless, and it carried a kind of power that could pry open everything. The overflowing power of chaos shuttled through the void, causing time and space to flow as if it carried a kind of power of disorder. Boom! The dragon head monster summoned by the Wuxin ancestor made its move at that moment. One of the dragon claws in its body was like a tentacle that suddenly extended infinitely from its body and grabbed at Tao Lotus Fairy. The earth and sky were turned upside down with one claw, and it was incomparably fierce as it covered Tao Lotus Fairy. Tao Lotus Fairy didn't say a word. She closed her eyes slightly, and with a kind of peerless aura, she stretched out her slender little finger with only a few inches of her body. In an instant, everyone seemed to see a divine moon appear behind Tao Lotus Fairy. Cold, bright, and insufferably arrogant, there was a mythical aura spreading. She aimed her telepathic finger at the dragon claw. In the eyes of the people of Battle Sect, Tao Lotus Fairy's finger was so small that it was almost the size of sesame seed in front of the huge dragon claw. However, when this sesame seed-sized finger collided with the dragon claw actually exploded into pieces on the spot. It was directly smashed into pieces. The power of just one finger had easily smashed the mountain-like dragon claw of the dragon head monster. Although the Tao Lotus Fairy that Wang Ling had summoned was small, her power was indeed unparalleled. After the dragon claw was smashed, the pain of the backlash was quickly reflected on the Wuxin ancestor. He started to feel pain in his brain, and he should have directly spat out a mouthful of blood. But when the blood reached his mouth, he swallowed it back into his stomach. As a primordial one, He didn't want to lose his composure in this kind of situation. He didn't want to be in such a sorry state. However, Wang Ling's strength was still far beyond his imagination. He even started to feel a little desperate. He couldn't figure out how such a person could survive in this world. He was less than 20 years old, but had so many great Daos. Although Wu Xin didn't show it, there was already a clear fear in his eyes. Although this gaze was fleeting, Wang Ling still managed to catch it. In a confrontation between experts, it was a battle of momentum. Once such a look appeared, then it meant that Wang Ling's defeat was already decided. In order to better protect Wang Wan, he hadn't done it himself, and had instead summoned the great Tao Lotus Fairy to take care of it for him. He was clearly aware of Fairy Tao Lotus combat strength, so he wasn't worried at all about the outcome of this battle. Boom! Perhaps it was because she caught the trace of fear in Wu Xian's eyes. Fairy Tao Lotus acted decisively again. She still didn't speak a single word. She directly broke free from the remaining Tao Lotuses, and she transformed into the most dazzling shooting star that soared into the sky. After that, she used her slender leg to fiercely slap the body of the dragon head-sewn monster, causing an enormous explosion to resound, and it caused everyone to be extremely shocked. No one doubted the power of this kick. It was so strong and fierce that it could break everything as it swept across the battlefield. The dragon head-stitched monster suffered a painful blow, and the countless faces on its body began to distort. Endless wails rang out from all directions. Tao Lotus Fairy's kick directly caused the monster's huge body to cave in. The dozens of faces on the monster's huge body seemed to have been crushed by something as they twisted into a ball. Whoa! The heartless patriarch finally couldn't bear the pain of the backlash. The blood he had just swallowed surged out of his body again, and he spat it out on the spot. At the same time, he felt a sharp pain in his head, as if it was going to split open on the spot. On the other side, Tao Lotus Fairy, who had activated her battle mode, was ruthless. Her small figure moved rhythmically as she split into several shadows that attacked the monster from all directions. With each kick, the heartless patriarch vomited a mouthful of blood. After 4 kicks, the heartless patriarch fell from the sky to the ground like a meteor that had lost its light as he knelt on the ground. His originally delicate and handsome face was no longer so, and he began to look old. Each of Tao Lotus Fairy's kicks was so powerful that they could shatter stars and break a person's time. It was only then that Heartless realized that among the 28 great Tao that Wang Ling possessed, there was actually one, the legendary Time Tao. Although it wasn't his main great Tao, it was the Tao that controlled eternal life. It was a Tao that he had always dreamed of mastering. This young man had clearly comprehended this great Tao, but hadn't regarded it as his main great Tao, and had instead set it aside. The heartless patriarch found it hard to believe. Thus, each of Tao Lotus Fairy's kicks carried the power of time. One kick after another, she kicked the heartless patriarch from his delicate and handsome appearance into a doddering old vegetable. He couldn't even stand steadily as he knelt on one knee and shivered. The wrinkles on his face were especially obvious, and he instantly lost all his dignity. As an ancient being, Heartless was extremely ashamed and resentful. This was such a misfortune, and even more so, a great humiliation. I haven't lost yet. Tao Lotus Fairy didn't waste any words. Even though Heartless had been reduced to such a miserable state, she still showed no mercy. After activating battle mode, she would only follow Wang Ling's instructions to complete her task. Bang! With another flick of her finger, she used the primordial finger on the face of the dragon-headed Stitch monster. In an instant, the entire land of the Supreme World split open, and like a cake being cut, it was sliced into tiny grids, densely packed, and evenly divided piece by piece. A huge amount of energy directly seeped in and instantly disintegrated the stitched monster into pieces. Countless pieces of flesh exploded, and then turned into powder bit by bit as the power of chaos seeped in. Puff! The heartless patriarch spurted out blood again. Unable to resist, he fell to the ground. There was basically no suspense in this kind of battle. From the moment Dao Lotus Fairy made her move, it was already predetermined. From the moment Wang Ling decided to kill Heartless at all costs, he had already taken the initiative. He didn't have the strength to resist at all, and the violent beating left everyone in Battle's sect dumbfounded. After confirming that the Heartless Patriarch had been completely beaten to the ground and couldn't get up again, Dao Lotus Fairy returned to the Great Dao Lotus. Then, the petals of the lotus closed again and turned into a bolt of light that was sucked back into Wang Ling's king's eye. That's it. Everyone in Battle Sect was suspicious. Of course not. Earlier, this was just Dao Lotus Fairy's performance. It wasn't Wang Ling's turn yet. Although the Heartless Patriarch in front of him was already a dying dog, Wang Ling didn't intend to show any mercy at all this time. Bang! Bang! Another 2 loud bangs rang out. Wang Ling brought Wang Yuan with him. The brother and sister pair gave the Heartless Patriarch another slap. This ancient being who had clamored to turn them into specimens. Finally, at this moment, as the Supreme World fell apart, it turned into a meat patty and stopped breathing forever. Chapter 1691. The Heartless Patriarch's death could only be described as tragic. When Wang Ling and Wang Yuan moved their palms away, his body was already completely unrecognizable as a human. Because this supreme world was in an alternate space and not on Earth, it was completely outside the law, so Wang Ling hadn't had much to worry about. If this had happened on Earth, he might have been sentenced for excessive self-defense under existing cultivation laws. Furthermore, he and Wang Yuan had each received a palm strike. The destructive power of this brother-sister combination palm technique was too strong, and there was no way to clean up the mess. The supreme world has collapsed. It seems that the Heartless Ancestor is really dead, Xiang Yi said after sensing the aura fluctuations in the space. After all, it was Ling Junren and Spiritual Master Yuan's palms. When each of them received a palm strike, it was like the hearts of young men who had been rejected. Monk Jin Deng said at that moment, "Hearts of young men. That's right. These hearts of young men are like a crushed plastic bottle. This kind of wound can never be repaired." "Not necessarily," Loopy Toad added at that moment. "Why do you say that, little friend Joa?" Jin Deng was puzzled. "Isn't it just a crushed plastic bottle? I just need to blow on it." Everyone, Lotus Sun and Kamiya Ryoko, were the only ones who looked bewildered and didn't know what to say. Elsewhere, in the illusory realm of nothingness, the last group of people who were still dealing with the indescribable creatures swiftly received news of the Heartless Ancestor's death. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had been sent to use the special little corpse wrapping picture to collect the creatures. At that moment, they had successfully completed their task and returned victorious. They moved extremely quickly and followed Wang Ling's instructions without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Who would have thought that just as they were about to report back to Wang Ming, the Heartless Ancestor would also die at the same time? A confrontation between experts was just this plain and boring, as expected of Ling Junren. Although Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had already anticipated how the victor of this battle would be, they never thought that the Heartless Ancestor, who was said to be invincible after activating his God Brain 100%, would actually die so quickly. "I'll have to trouble you two seniors to bring the little corpse wrapping picture to Ling Ling." Wang Ming had already possessed Jia Bugui's body for some time, and had fused his brain waves earlier. At that moment, his face looked a little strange. "How is Mr. Ming? I feel like you're not feeling well." "It's within my expectations. After all, the brainwaves in this body are only a small part of my main body, so I won't be able to hold on for long," Wang Ming said. "In order to hide myself completely, I even fused my will with the original owner of this body. But as time passes, the original owners will return. I'll be kicked out. What do we do now? I discovered some interesting things in this illusory realm of nothingness in this enormous imperial city. It'll be helpful for my own research." Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming took out a deep blue crystal card from his clothes. This was the copy crystal card that he had made when Li Xian and Zhang Zian were on a mission. It could copy his current brainwave state and transfer it to the card. How about this? Take this crystal card with you. The crystal card contains some information that I have obtained from the illusory void. When we get back, just give it to my real body, Wang Ming said. Li Xian and Zhang Zian looked at each other, then raised their hands in salute. Yes, Mr. Ming. Wang Ming's current state was actually equivalent to a small clone spell. After the mission was completed, his clone would disappear and his brain waves would dissipate, which was very normal. Now that the Heartless Patriarch had been dealt with, there was no one to manage the illusory void and the entire Imperial City, so Battle Sect naturally had jurisdiction. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wanted to wait until the situation in the Imperial City was stabilized before handing it over to Huaxiao Alliance. If Huaxiao Alliance didn't want it, he could directly use the geographical location to open a Battle Sect branch or something. Wang Ling snapped his fingers and everyone was moved back into the Imperial City. Immortal Toya had already been waiting here for a long time. Although the mission this time had been relatively successful, some people had still been injured. Thus, after receiving a notification from Li Xian and Zhang Zian's clone, he had swiftly followed them into the Imperial City. Right now, the Imperial City was in a state of chaos. In the absence of order, the gate of the Imperial City was wide open. Countless rich people in the core area drove their carriages to the slums and began to fight for a safe place with the poor people there. Of course, these problems would be resolved after Battle Sect took over, and peace would be restored to this technology city as soon as possible. At the same time, the Chaos Shiprudder was also brought back. After seeing its master, the Heartless Patriarch, suffer such a miserable death, the Chaos Ship wasn't stupid and knew that it would be useless if it stubbornly resisted. Thus, the artifact spirit of the Chaos Ship spoke for the first time, its voice full of fear. Don't turn me into a milk bottle. Loopy Toad rolled its eyes. It's just a milk bottle. I'm not going to kill you. I was a toad back then, and it's actually not bad to change my appearance. But I still don't want to be made into a milk bottle. My master is kind and merciful. He made you into a milk bottle to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Otherwise, tell me, what use are you? But there are a lot of materials in the world that can be used to make milk bottles, but they're not as sturdy as you. Loopy Toad continued to persuade it earnestly. You're the one who gave you face when my master took a fancy to you. As for the other materials you mentioned, they're nothing more than paper straws in milk tea shops. They can't be inserted, they can't be sucked, and they'll even go soft halfway. Everyone, Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kwamiya, were the only ones who looked bewildered and didn't know what Loopy Toad was saying. So, I advise you to give up resisting, said Loopy Toad. The Chaos Ship Rudder was in despair. Its original function was to change the trajectory of all things, but if it became a milk bottle, its function would probably change along with its appearance. Yeah, Wang Wan suddenly said at that moment. As a level 10 expert in baby language, Loopy Toad quickly translated Wang Wan's words. Our spiritual master Wan said that your function won't be changed. Even if it's a milk bottle, it can still be a ship rudder. As long as your body is hollowed out. Hollowed out, that's right, hollowed out to look like a container, and then put a pacifier on top. When you drink it, you can hold it close to you, and it'll be more stable. The Chaos Ship Rudder sighed in its heart. It knew that now that things had come to this, it was already doomed. There was no way it could escape being made into a milk bottle. Furthermore, it didn't have any room to struggle or resist. As for the rest of the Battle Sect members, most of them were just watching the show. Of course, there was one person who was thinking about something else at that moment. Lotus Sun's mind was currently filled with Wang Ling's birthday present. It was just that she hadn't decided what to give him yet. If it was possible. Chapter 1692. She had never worried about a single gift in the past because there were too many gifts that could be bought with money in this world. But when it came to Wang Ling, she still wanted to give him something special. At the very least, it had to be something that reflected her sincerity and feelings. After all, a gift that could be bought with money wasn't sincerity. When she was very young, Sunny Yuan had taught her that for cultivators of Huaxiao Nation, giving gifts was in fact a very particular thing. There was also a great deal of courtesy in the gift, and it wasn't without reason that the traditional culture of reciprocity had lasted for thousands of years. Reasonable courtesy in return was an important lesson in interpersonal relationships and was different from simply giving a gift directly. And it wasn't that the more expensive the gift, the better. The key was suitability. Nowadays, more and more people misunderstood the meaning of gift giving and often changed the meaning as you gave it. She hadn't believed this before, and it wasn't until now that she realized how unfathomable this knowledge was. It turned out that when you like someone, you'll really be in a dilemma when it comes to choosing a gift. The more you cared, the more you liked someone. And the more you liked someone, the more you hesitated. After about 20 minutes, Wang Ling had transformed the chaos ship's rudder into a milk bottle in the shape of a rudder. And at the same time, he had turned the chaos glow which he had put away earlier into milk powder for brewing. The color of this nutritious chaos milk was very beautiful, and it was actually rainbow-colored. Holding the milk bottle, little girl Nuan gulped down the milk, her soft little face full of happiness. It looks delicious. Resting her hands on her knees, Ryoko Kamiya looked at Wang Nuan drinking milk. No girl who saw this scene wouldn't feel overflowing with maternal instincts. She thought Wang Nuan was too cute. For a moment, she even had the dangerous thought of having a baby with Odd Zhua, as expected of spiritual master Nuan. Only Ling Jinren's and spiritual master Nuan's physiques can withstand this chaos milk. Monk Golden Lamp's eyes curved into a smile. To Wang Ling and Wang Nuan, milk powder brewed with chaos glow didn't seem like much, but this kind of milk actually had a strong after effect and could easily go to the head. If someone else drank it, even if it was just a mouthful, it would feel like they had been forced to drink hard liquor. If their physiques were slightly weaker and they drank too much, it was very easy for energy to overflow and cause their bodies to explode. So, Senior Golden Lamp means that my body will explode? Hearing this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's interest was piqued. This can also be considered unlocking a new way to die, which will be very helpful for improving my courting death Tao scripture. As expected of a perfected cultivator, when the rest of the battle sect heard this, they all exclaimed in surprise. This great death-courting senior was now on the path of constantly unlocking new ways to die. Unable to extricate himself, since ancient times, it was unheard of to increase the intensity of one's cultivation through constant death, although he would be resurrected. But the pain of death could still be felt. There were all kinds of ways to die. Some of them even had to die in excruciating pain. Based on a normal person's train of thought, no matter how strong the courting death Tao Sutra was, it was impossible for them to learn such a method to increase their cultivation. As for Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it could only be said that one dared to teach and the other dared to learn, of course. If grenade-throwing Senior Immortal succeeded in his studies in the end, his combat strength would be unparalleled. In the later stages, as long as he unlocked a new way to die, the increase in his combat strength would be much greater than the accumulation of experience that a monk would gain in one reincarnation. At that time, for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, one death was equivalent to one reincarnation. Furthermore, a monk would need to endure the experience of his current life before he could enter the next reincarnation. Just the growth potential alone was a different story. Senior Immortal, it's done. Qinzong and I have already set up BattleSec transmission array according to your instructions. It connects directly from BattleSec's true venerated hall to the main hall of the castle in Imperial City, Xiang he said at that moment, carrying a black sniper rifle case on his back. He and Qinzong had worked together to smoothly set up this green passageway. The follow-up work was to wait for BattleSec to completely take over the current situation in the technology city. But there was one thing that was a little unfortunate for now. After this incident in the illusory land of nothingness, he and Qinzong wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already used to observing people's expressions, and he could tell what Qinzong and Xiang were thinking. He immediately said, "After this ordeal, both of you are already guest elders of my battle sect. If you don't mind, why don't you stay here for a few more days? In any case, when you go back, Brother Ling can send you back to the previous world line, and you can even specify a time point. It won't affect you. Is that really okay? Hearing this, their eyes flickered. They looked at Wang Ling, who shrugged nonchalantly. Of course, Wang Ling wouldn't have agreed to an ordinary person's request. But Qin Zong and Xiang Yi, they were special cases. Thank you so much, Ling Jinren and Senior Immortal. Both of them immediately bowed and nodded. It wasn't often that they could stay by Wang Ling's side and learn like this. Although the green transmission passageway had already been set up because of the twists and turns in the space, the internal structure of the passageway was very complicated, so a third-party medium was needed for the transmission. Wang Ling directly reorganized the Rubik's cubes that were used to seal the living creatures into something similar to a space elevator. The space inside was incredibly large and could hold up to a maximum of 100 trillion tons. Battle Sect was divided into two groups. One group would stay behind to connect with them, and the other would go back to share information on the technology city. Because he needed to take care of little girl Yuan, Wang Ling didn't go back right away. Contrary to his expectations, this time, Lotus Sun actually didn't think of any way to get on the same flight as him. She directly pulled Kamiya Ryoko's hand into the elevator, looking like she was in a hurry to get back. Wang Ling, see you on Earth. Before she left, she was still full of smiles as she greeted him in a natural and unrestrained manner. As soon as the elevator doors closed, she immediately dialed Sun Iyuan's number. Kamiya Ryoko was startled. You can even get a signal like this? Adishwa smiled. Senior Golden Lamp has already blessed Masteress's phone, so it's not a problem at all for the signal to cross dimensions. You can even make calls from the third dimension to the second dimension. That is to say, you can talk to those fictional anime characters. In theory, it's completely possible, Adishwa said. If my Shifu enlightens us, we might even be able to bring those fictional anime characters out. On the side, Zhou Zi was also shocked when he heard this. He knew that Adishwa had planned all this so that he could smoothly become Master Wang's disciple and gain the approval of that Master Wang outside. After this incident, it could be said that Zhou Zi's view of the world had been completely refreshed. His Grandmaster was too strong, so strong that he even wondered if he was human. Chapter 1693. Chaos, darkness, and the fear of drowning. This kind of pain was an after effect of anyone who had fought Wang Ling. The second before he was killed by Wang Ling, the heartless patriarch had used the last of his strength to separate his brain waves and become something drifting in the universe. He originally wanted to silently enter the consciousness of the Battle Sect members on the field and patiently wait for the counterattack. However, the moment he separated from the consciousness, the Battle Sect members' consciousness suddenly exploded. However, the moment he separated his brain waves, they were captured by an inexplicable force, as if they had been wrapped up in an impenetrable net. Who are you? Heartless found it hard to believe that he had been caught. Like you, we are Avengers waiting for the right time. That laughter rang out directly from the depths of his mind. However, he was too weak at the moment, and he was unable to completely discard this voice. The most important thing right now is to restore your God brain. The voice continued, but your body is no longer there. Do you have a way? Heartless asked. Intuitively, he could tell that the person who had captured him definitely wasn't on Wang Ling's side. Also, for some reason, he had a strong intuition. He felt that the person he was talking to had also been persecuted by Wang Ling. This was an interaction between victims. Although they didn't know each other well, there was a wonderful telepathic connection between them. It's not hard to solve the problem of the body. I have time cells. After the God brain recovers, I can use the power of time and memory to change you back to your original appearance. At that moment, another voice rang out in his mind. Who are you? Heartless was puzzled. Both of us are victims. You just need to know that we will help you. But the God brain is already broken, and what I have here is only a portion of the brain waves that were separated from it. Restoring it is easier said than done. Actually, it's not that difficult. We just need to find a suitable match, the Grave God said. The Grave Goddess said, And this match is actually on Earth. If the current you were to possess someone's body, how long would you be able to maintain it? No more than an hour at most. That's enough. Baija nodded and said in unison with the grave god. Next, we will help you transfer this memory of yours to another person without anyone noticing. Who? This is a citizen of your city. He's also a wealthy merchant in the core area. His name is Jabugue. Jabugue? Wu seemed to have some impression of this person, but he couldn't figure out why it was him. Looks like you still don't know that your world has long been invaded by brainwaves. Baija laughed. This person's name is Wang Ming, and he's one of our future opponents. So what's the plan now? This person is extremely compatible with you. So as long as you cooperate with us to complete this plan of swapping the crown prince with a civet cat without anyone noticing, let your brainwaves enter his body quietly, and then possess his body. Baija said, of course, it's not as if there are no conditions to achieve all of this. Then, let's talk about the conditions. Wu Xian knew that in his current situation, he actually had no other choice. Join us. Baija and the tomb god said in unison. We are called the Avengers of the Old Ones. On the way to the space elevator, Lotus Sun called Sunny Yuan, the head of the Sun family, and there was a hint of urgency in her voice. Grandpa, I want to ask you. She hadn't wanted to trouble Old Man Sun at first, but the situation was urgent. Wang Ling's birthday was coming up, and she was flustered as she didn't know what to give him to express her feelings. You said you want to give classmate Wang Ling a present, but you don't know what to give him? Sunny Yuan was also stumped by this question. He knew Wang Ling's personality, and it definitely wouldn't do to be too conspicuous and high profile. How about we give him an aircraft carrier? Sunny Yuan said seriously after thinking for a bit. Aircraft carrier. Lotus Sun instantly choked on the words she had yet to say. Grandpa, isn't this too high profile? How is this high profile? It's just a yacht. I didn't give him a spaceship or anything like that. Lotus Sun was speechless. It seemed that her grandfather had some misunderstanding about keeping a low profile. However, with the Sun family's wealth, which was comparable to that of a country, an aircraft carrier was indeed like a yacht. There were no less than 60 aircraft carriers parked in the port that cooperated with Huagua Water Curtain Group. But Grandpa, even if this isn't too high profile for you, Grandpa, but gifts that can be bought with money aren't sincere, Lotus Sun said. After saying this, Sun Yuan nodded meaningfully. Oh, that's true. In that case, why don't I give you some rustic words of love? Rustic words of love? Lotus Sun was puzzled. For example, Rong Rong, what's your favorite wine? Sunny Yuan asked. Grandpa, I'm still a student, I know. So, this is just an example. Sunny Yuan said, suppose you said these words to classmate Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling definitely won't know how to answer. So when the time comes, you can act according to the circumstances and confess. Then what should I say next? Lotus Sun asked. This question is very simple. Loopy Toad sighed. Of course it's with your forever as Earth wine. Lotus Sun and the others, Sunny Yuan. For another example, you can tell classmate Wang Ling that you're Ling Air and he's Ding Dang. Loopy Toad, because jingle bells jingle. Lotus Sun and the others, Loopy Toad. Oh, that's right, I know of another rustic word of love. You can say that you're the immortal of sword and fairy, and he's the legend of chivalry. Because it's the legend of sword and fairy and knight. Lotus Sun and the others. Question mark. Although Lotus Sun didn't really understand, she felt that there was something wrong with Loopy Toad. After asking a few more times and not getting the answer she wanted, Lotus Sun hung up the phone in disappointment. The main reason was that she felt that if she kept talking, her thoughts would collapse even more. Kamiya Ryoko suggested, seriously, Rong Rong, do you want to give yourself away and give Wang Ling a surprise? Lotus Sun's face instantly turned red. Well, will that really work? To be honest, that was what she had thought before, but she didn't know if it would work. I think it will. Kamiya Ryoko continued to come up with a plan. Look, when the time comes, you can find an excuse and say that classmate Wang Ling's crispy noodle snacks won a prize. In addition to giving him a limited edition crispy noodle snack, you can also throw in a big, beautifully wrapped gift box, but you're hiding in the big gift box. Chapter 1694. Will this really work? Lotus-san was skeptical about Kamiya Yoshiko's plan. Regardless of whether this method was feasible or not, no matter how well she hid herself, Wang Ling would still be able to see through her at a glance. In the past, when she didn't know how strong Wang Ling was, she might have given it a try. But now that she knew Wang Ling's true strength, trying it again would just be asking for trouble. Not necessarily. There might be a chance. Meng Jin-deng knew what her concerns were, and he couldn't help smiling. Miss Rong is still worried that you'll be seen through. But if we work together, we might be able to deceive everyone. Actually, the monk didn't really want to help her, but wanted to see if there really was a way to hide it from Wang Ling. Challenging Wang Ling was Monk Golden Lamp's daily routine. Even if he couldn't win in terms of raw strength, the monk still wanted to challenge him in other aspects. Although it was said that a monk shouldn't have a competitive heart, the monk didn't think that it was competitive. It was clearly the desire to improve himself because he was brave enough to take on challenges. But whether or not he had the right to challenge her depended on Lotus Sunday. On the side, Ajwa, Josie, and Loopy Toad all vaguely felt that this didn't sound very reliable, but it was clear that they couldn't stop Lotus Sun's birthday surprise. What happened next was that one dared to speak and the other dared to listen. Then, Senior, what should I do? Lotus Sun asked. If we want to keep this a secret, we need to do it in 3 ways. Monk Golden Lamp suggested. First, we need to divert attention. Like Miss Yoshiko said, give him enough crispy noodle snacks. That way, Ling Jinren's attention won't be on the big gift box that Miss Rong is in. That makes sense. Senior, please continue. Lotus Sun believed him. Secondly, we need to make an issue of the packaging. When the time comes, this penniless monk will personally help Miss Rong. Miss Rong only needs to use the golden talismans blessed by this poor monk and stick them all over her body. Although I probably won't be able to fool Ling Jinren, I can at least resist him for a while. Monk Jin-deng came up with a plan. Then, the most important point is Ling Jinren's King's Eye. With the King's Eye, he has the ability to separate the false from the true, and any disguise is useless. Hence, I'll need Brother Zhua's help with this. Me? Pointing at himself, the expression on his face gradually turned savage. Ha ha ha. Sure. How can I help you? This was not the first time he, as a disciple, had cheated his master. In any case, it was to foster a relationship between Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, so he was naturally duty-bound to do this. I remember that Brother Zhua has the King's Eye sharing mechanism. Then, the moment Ling Jinren received the gift, could he use the shared King's Eye ability to temporarily turn off its passive ability? It's a passive ability that prevents you from removing the false from the true. The monk said, of course. You don't need to resist for too long. A few minutes is enough. This, rubbing his chin, he frowned and said, I've never tried this before. I don't know if it'll work. Does this count as deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors? Brother Zhua, are you thinking too much? How could this be considered as deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors? It's obviously a beautiful story of marriage. I see. Zhua nodded. All right, I'll try. Seeing a group of people discussing their future plans so seriously, Kwamiya Ryoko began to regret her suggestion. Regarding the gift, she had only mentioned it casually. How could she have known that Lotus-san was trying everything out of desperation? She really believed it. She didn't know why, but she had a bad feeling. At night, after returning to the staff apartment, Ajwa immediately drafted an acceptance plan for BattleSec's official takeover of the technology city in the realm of illusion this time. His position in BattleSec was special. In addition to his position as a guest elder, he was also one of BattleSec's ministers. Currently, BattleSec was divided into 8 divisions, and Ajwa's 8th division was mainly responsible for 3 things: supervising the sec's overall discipline, coordinating the sec's future direction, and planning current development plans. To put it bluntly, in online terms, it could be summed up as dog management plus dog planning. Was BattleSec attacking the technology city in advance this time? Reporting it without approval was in fact a violation of the rules. So in this case, Ajwa needed to emphasize the salient point in the plan, the danger of this technology city. He would report it to Huaxiao Alliance after making it an emergency evacuation. And there could only be two subsequent outcomes. One was that after Battle Sect completed the connection, Huaxiao Alliance would take over the technology city. First, that was for Battle Sect to take over and smoothly expand. Of course, was it one more technology city or one less technology city? This wasn't important to Battle Sect at the moment. Battle Sect was now the #1 sect. They had a strong army and were powerful. What they needed to do wasn't to blindly become stronger, but to find a way to stabilize their current position. Thus, as the head of Battle Sect's 8 divisions, Ajwa naturally had to ensure that nothing went wrong. Of course, in addition to this acceptance plan, Ajwa also had another plan, which was to take Zhou Zi in as a disciple. After this incident, Ajwa felt that Zhou Zi was already fully qualified to become his disciple based on his outstanding performance. Now, all that was missing was a nod from Wang Ling. Li Xian and Zhang Zijin were among the first batch of people to go back. They had heard about Wang Ling's birthday, but they didn't care much about Lotus Sun's plan. They were more concerned about what they should give Wang Ling regarding this point. Both of them had a tacit understanding that no one had more authority to speak than the person they were about to meet. In Wang Ming's private research institute, the two of them followed the instructions of his brainwave clone in the technology city and handed the memory chip to Wang Ming himself. The moment he saw the chip, Wang Ming knew what had happened, and he couldn't help smiling as he pinched it. So that's how it is. He copied his memories from the technology city. That's very much like my clone style. That Mr. Ming from the technology city said that there are important research materials inside. After all, my opponent is that legendary immemorial being, the man who mastered core technology in ancient times. It will naturally be helpful for my research. Wang Ming couldn't help sighing when he said this. It's just that it's a pity. Li Xian looked at Wang Ming. Mr. Ming, are you referring to that Shouchong? Wang Ming nodded. I heard that after he was captured, he was split up, and the Heartless Ancestor's disciple fused that scent into his brain. That's right. Zhang Zijin nodded and said, it's a pity that Brother Li Xian and I arrived too late, otherwise we might have been able to save him. It's all fate. Wang Ming sighed, then directly inserted the chip in his hand into a helmet-shaped decomposer, and then put the helmet on his head. Then, let's see what kind of useful information I have on the other side. Chapter 1695. All along, Wang Ling had a faint intuition that while some of the major events that had happened recently seemed to have come to an end, they might not have truly been resolved yet. The dark forces behind the scenes might be plotting a counterattack plan, and they might form a hemp rope to deal with him. It sounded a little scary. It even made him a little flustered. However, this panic was not for himself, but for his family. It was true that he was very strong, but Father and Mother Wang were at the end of the day ordinary little cultivators who hadn't even reached the foundation establishment stage. As for his little sister Wang Nuan, she was even more of a little girl who hadn't formally developed yet. Although it was important to accumulate combat experience, he was still in the growth stage. It would not be good if little girl Nuan fought too many times. According to teacher Luo Xiang, letting little girl Nuan continue to fight might constitute the crime of employing child labor to do dangerous labor. Wang Ling felt that he couldn't afford to be accused of this. Thus, he felt that it was necessary to make various preparations. Not for himself, but for his family. It was clearly not enough to have a few soul transformation monsters guarding the house. If Father and Mother Wang went out, they might run into other dangers. It was precisely because of this that Wang Ling hadn't canceled Father Wang's Qilin arm, which he had enchanted the last time. Everyone knew that this pair of Qilin arms had transformed into a Qilin maid. One of them was called Kato. One was called Eagle. It was now intelligently controlled and had a very strong learning ability. Through watching martial arts videos and movies, it had absorbed all kinds of combat experience. Wang Ling heard that Father Wang's inch punch had been very powerful recently. Every punch landed on flesh and his hand speed was extremely fast. It was almost no different from that martial arts star in a movie, and even seemed to surpass him at one point. Of course, this was an effect that could only be achieved when the Qilin arm was activated. Under normal circumstances, the Qilin arm would be invisible. On one hand, it was to prevent the Qilin maid transformed by the Qilin arm from destroying the harmonious relationship between husband and wife. On the other hand, it was to prevent Father Wong from accidentally breaking the keyboard when he was typing. Therefore, only in life-threatening situations would the Qilin arm be triggered and activated automatically. All in all, compared with Mother Wong, Father Wong still had a certain level of self-defense. But overall, it was still not enough. The enemies they were facing now were no longer the arrogant bugs in the corners of Earth. Every single one of them was a universe-level big shot, a being from the old days faction, an ancient being. When encountering these people, he had to be well prepared in all aspects. When Wong Yuan had been born, the grave god had wanted to do something to Mother Wong, which had actually given Wong Ling a very important revelation. He felt that it was time to pay attention to his parents. It was Friday, December 26th. For the first time ever, Wong Ling took the day off and didn't go to school. It was clearly his birthday today, but he was worrying about the safety of his parents and the comprehensive defense of the Wong family small villa. Father and Mother Wong were very touched. Because it was Wong Ling's birthday, he had actually thought of giving them presents. Although the present was a pair of long johns, to be honest, he had been inspired by Zhou Zi. In order to protect Zhou Zi from danger during this trip to the technology city this time, Aju had put on layer after layer the long johns he had given Zhou Zi. It directly turned Zhou Zi into a Michelin tire. However, the results were surprisingly good. For Father and Mother Wong, who had no defense ability, long johns were indeed the best choice. Of course, he had made some new improvements to the long johns that had been gifted to him this time. It had been upgraded to version 5.0. The new improvements were as follows. 1. Version 5.0 of the long johns will have the same defense as 10 normal sets of long johns. 2. You don't need to worry about your hands and feet being tied up. With one set, you can directly lock down all parts of your body for thorough protection. 3. In the event of an emergency, you can activate a stand-in attack mode. When the time comes, the long johns will summon a powerful stand-in bodyguard to protect you from all sides. Then there was the backyard and the front yard of the Wong family small villa. After returning from the technology city, Wong Ling had also brought back 096, which had recognized On Wan as its master, and it was currently being kept in the backyard. 096 had originally been a humanoid, rabbit-eared creature. Wong Ling had taught it how to change its appearance so that it could transform into a cute rabbit. It was only the size of a teacup, snow white, and looked harmless, but from the way it covered its face, it could still be seen that it was 096. That was to say, the Wong family now had Loopy Toad in the front yard and 096 in the back. A dog and a rabbit as security guards. This arrangement was unheard of. What about the feed? Loopy Toad asked at that moment. Compared with 096, Loopy Toad had Dopey Gua to provide it with private messages at regular intervals. Furthermore, after becoming a divine beast, in addition to ordinary private messages, it could also absorb the power of chaos to replenish itself. But 096 was different. In theory, this type of host creature was also a product of chaos, but in the eyes of chaos, it was a mistake born out of chaos. Thus, its attribute was actually a little strange. It wasn't compatible with chaos, and the power of chaos couldn't provide 096 with normal energy supplements. But Wong Ling had already anticipated this. He took out a grass seed from his pocket and planted it directly in the backyard. This grass seed startled 096 and Loopy Toad at the same time. It's actually Sky Tomb grass. Loopy Toad was completely dumbfounded. Wong Ling nodded. This Sky Tomb grass seed had been given to him by Lung Ming. Loopy Toad itself was a manifestation of Sky Tomb grass, so it naturally had some seeds. The principle was similar to how Sun Wukong plucked out his hair to make other monkeys appear. The key point was that Sky Tomb grass was different from ordinary grass. It wasn't a product of chaos, but could grow infinitely by absorbing chaos, spirit energy, primordial chi, and other kinds of energy. As long as it had enough energy, it would be a perpetual motion machine that could continuously grow taller. It was definitely enough for 096 to use as fodder. As for its growth, Wang Ling had also prepared a chaos sprinkler. The space inside the sprinkler was connected to the universe, and it would absorb the power of chaos from the universe at regular intervals. 096 couldn't absorb the power of chaos to replenish its own energy, so it could use this chaos sprinkler to water the sky tune grass first. Once it was fertilized, it could directly harvest it as fodder. Of course, apart from Loopy Toad and 096, the fortifications outside the Wang family's small villa clearly weren't enough. So Wang Ling also took out a pair of red paintings from his Wang Zhibao pants and stuck them on the back and front courtyards. On the painting was a pair of bearded old men. They looked a bit like the old K from poker cards. It was a common type of defensive magic equipment. Under normal circumstances, the creatures sealed in the painting were a bit like ghosts. However, these ghosts had been processed and purified by humans and had been tamed to the point of obedience. Take this pair of paintings that Wang Ling had taken out as an example. This magic treasure was called Unparalleled Nation Night. One of the old men in the painting carried a missile launcher and the other a Gatling gun, and they looked very mighty and majestic. The most important thing was that apart from the painting, there was actually a couplet on it. It read, "Sweep the spear in all directions, cripple the demon, bombard the exquisite flying tiger." Chapter 1696. Wang Ling heaved a long sigh of relief after the external fortifications were completed. This way, as long as Father and Mother Wang stayed in the house when the enemy attacked, they would be safe. The Wang family's small villa was now like a cannon, and the word tyrannical could be used to describe it. No matter who it was, they would be able to beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp. Throughout the entire process, An obediently lay on Wang Ling's shoulder and watched. This little girl liked to stick to him, and this was the first time Wang Ling had felt a different kind of emotion from Wang Nuan when she touched someone else. He actually didn't reject her, which was the most incredible thing to him. But in fact, it didn't take long for Wang Ling to figure it out in his own way. Because little girl Nuan was his blood sister and one of the most important people to him, he wouldn't reject her. The most important people. Thinking about this, Wang Ling felt like he was thinking about something completely new on his birthday this year. For a very long time, he had never thought about other people's affairs. But now, when he realized how important the people around him were, he suddenly felt the need to protect these important people. These people should not only be referring to his family. He had to admit that he was a little conflicted now, because according to his usual logic, it was as if these people didn't exist that he could enjoy the kind of tranquil and peaceful life he yearned for. But now, that kind of life seemed to be getting further and further away from him, and he was also becoming more and more used to it. As evening approached, more than 10 familiar figures approached the Wang family's small villa. They were divided into two groups. One was led by Super Chun, and the other was led by Ajua. As Wang Ling's best brother at number 60 high school, there was no reason not to give him a birthday present. For this reason, whether it was Super Chun, Hirogwa, or Little Peanut, they had already prepared their gifts. Earlier, the class had also drawn up a list of Wang Ling's gifts. Super Chun had asked around in private, and Wang Ling had then compiled the list and sent it to Wang Ling. Because of Wang Ling's reticence, there weren't many people who were on good terms with him. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have received too many gifts. But the list this time was surprisingly generous. Why are there so many people? When Hiro Goi saw the full list, he was a little dumbfounded. Because a lot of people hear that Wang Ling is a mascot. In a sense, giving a gift to a mascot is a tribute that can increase one's luck, Little Peanut said. That's true, but in reality, the situation is more complicated than we thought. Complicated? Didn't you see that there are a lot of people from other classes on the gift list? They don't usually have anything to do with Wang Ling. So why would they give him gifts for no reason? Yes. How strange. Superchin spread his hands and said, "It's not strange at all. I think it's very likely that these people have also joined the Great Church." Hirogwa and Little Peanut nodded at almost the same time. They might not believe what other people said, but Superchin's mouth was real. He had to believe it. Of course, although there were many people who gave gifts, the gifts themselves were not that expensive. They were all high school students, so what they gave was just a thought. Not everyone could get an aircraft carrier as a gift like Lotus Sun's family. Thus, after school that day, Super Chun, Hirogwa, and Little Peanut directly delivered the gifts to the entrance of the Wong family's small villa. They had thought that Lotus Sun would also come, but to their surprise, she actually refused the invitation and directly disappeared as soon as the students left. Super Chun felt that it wasn't that Lotus Sun didn't want to give Wong Ling a gift, but that she clearly had her own reasons. It was just that he didn't know what on earth she wanted to do. Given Huagwa Water Curtain Group's financial resources, there was nothing in the world that money couldn't buy. But Super Chun felt that Lotus Sun definitely wouldn't want to give such an insincere gift. Hirogwa, what do you think Lotus Sun will give Wong Ling? She won't directly give him a house, right? If she directly give him a house, then oh my God, I'll have to work so hard for so many years. Probably not a house. This gift is too expensive. Wong Ling might not accept it, Little Peanut said. Also, this kind of gift is very tacky. For rich people, a house isn't a house at all. It's just a playing card. When I went to number 59 high school for the exchange meet earlier, I saw with my own eyes 3 girls use their property certificates to play Fight the Landlord. A straight flush from 1 ring to 9 rings. Have you ever seen it before? Hearing this, Super Chun and Hirogwa turned pale with shock. They had no idea this kind of operation existed at all. After a few minutes of silence, Super Chun said again, "I also don't think Lotus Sun will give him a house. It's too outrageous. It's not like she's getting married. Even if she's giving him a house, she has to think of a way to give herself away first." Hirogwa and Little Peanut understood once more. It turned out that Lotus Sun wanted to give herself away. Elsewhere, another group of people led by Ajwa approached the Wong family's small villa from a different direction. Lotus Sun had been very nervous along the way. It had taken her a lot of time to order the special crispy noodle snacks last night, and it hadn't been easy for her to make it in time. Of course, the most important thing was actually the gift box that contained her present, which Lotus Sun had taken a long time to choose. She had arranged to meet the courier who would deliver the gift box in front of the Wong family's small villa at this time, and everything else had already been arranged. "Masteress, you don't have to be so nervous. You have to relax a little. That way I can also relax a little." Ajwa comforted her. "Later, when your gift box is delivered along with the crispy noodle snacks, I'll do my best to break the king's eye's ability to separate the false from the true." He was really nervous. After all, this kind of behavior was indeed a little like deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors. "Who's your masteress?" Lotus Sun blushed and hurriedly cast a cooling spell on herself. After she calmed down a little, her willowy eyebrows furrowed slightly again, because the person delivering the gift box hadn't arrived yet. She, on the other hand, was ready. Just as they had planned at the beginning, Monk Jean Deng had prepared a lot of blessed golden talismans for her, and she just had to crawl into the gift box and then stick them all over her body. Ajwa knew that Lotus Sun had put a lot of effort into the custom-made gift box. After all, there had to be a person in the gift box. But when they had gone shopping yesterday, for some reason, most of the surprise gift boxes that contained people looked like coffins. So, in the end, Lotus Sun had no choice but to go the custom-made route. Ajwa heard that Lotus Sun had asked a skilled craftsman to tailor-make this gift box. It didn't look like a coffin at all, and was very artistic. "Is it that little brother in the red hat?" At that moment, Ajwa saw a courier little brother in the distance. Pulling a large box, he slowly rode over on an electric 3-wheeled motorcycle from afar. Through the king's eye, Ajwa could easily see what the custom-made gift box looked like inside the box. Then he sucked in a cold breath. This gift box chic was indeed chic. It was made of metal and had perfect curves. It indeed didn't look like a coffin at all, and had been completely custom-made for Lotus Sun Day. But the problem was this damn gift box was in the shape of a person. Chapter 1697. On Wang Ling's birthday, Wang Ming had initially wanted to give him the detailed concept of the first version of the new talisman. He planned to call it the Talisman of Eternity, and privately thought that it was the best gift he could give so far. Compared with all those fancy things that money could buy, only the design and development of the Talisman of Eternity could bring Wang Ling eternal happiness. A lot of people had different definitions of happiness. So for Wang Ling, what on earth was happiness? As a brother, Wang Ming felt that he had thought this through thoroughly. For Wang Ling, happiness was simple and ordinary. He especially hoped that one day he could personally tell Wang Ling, "Congratulations, Lingzi, you can finally live a normal life." But there was still a long way to go before he could realize this vision. After analyzing the memory chip he had brought from the illusory land of nothingness through a specialized analysis helmet, Wang Ming suddenly felt his brain and body sink into a long-lost fatigue. Logically speaking, given his brain capacity, it shouldn't have been a problem at all for him to process this short-term memory. But now he actually felt like he was in a trance, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. When he got up, his body swayed, and he almost knocked over the coffee on the table. Jiayin darted forward and steadied him. "Don't push yourself too hard." "I didn't," Wang Ming said weakly, his face deathly pale. He was a little uncomfortable, but he didn't know why. He was just analyzing data. How could he be so tired out? Could it be the crystal card? Wang Ming vaguely sensed that something wasn't right, and he hurriedly grabbed Li Xian's hand. "Senior Li Xian, let me ask you, who else touched this crystal card?" "Mr. Ming gave it to us, and no one else touched it," Li Xian replied. "Then who saw it while it was being made?" "Brother Zidao, and I used the small corpse picture that Ling Zhenren gave us to seal the remaining shelter creatures, and we didn't see how the crystal card was made," Li Xian answered truthfully. After saying this, Wang Ming instantly had a bad feeling. If there was no one to accompany and witness the process of making the crystal card, then the situation would be very thought-provoking. At that moment, Wang Ming's thoughts were in a mess. With a headache, he placed Jiayin's, Li Xian's, and Zhang Zipei's hands on top of each other, and then held them himself. "Inzi, Senior Li Xian, Senior Zhang Zipei, what I'm going to say next is very important. Please remain calm after hearing what I have to say. Mr. Ming, please speak your mind. We will listen to Mr. Ming's arrangement. It's like this. I suspect that my brain has been implanted with a consciousness. To put it simply, you can think of this consciousness as a virus in a computer program." Consciousness? What will happen to Mr. Ming? It's hard to say. This consciousness is very strong. I've already tried to use my own power to cleanse it, but it's useless, Wang Ming said. And now, the worst-case scenario is that I might become a completely different person. Then what should we do? At that moment, Jiayin composed herself and looked at Wang Ming. Wang Ming instantly smiled bitterly. "Why don't you cry? I'm already like this. Moreover, if I become another person, I might not be able to change back. What's the use of crying? I believe you have a solution. Moreover, you must change back." At that moment, Jiayin held Wang Ming's head. "Wang Ming, you must always remember, if you can't change back, it is very likely that you will be arranged into the legendary Tauren plot." Wang Ming, Jiayin's explanation was too terrifying, and Wang Ming was instantly enlightened. As it turned out, this obsession to avoid being turned into a Tauren played a huge role in the subsequent progress. On the other side, Ajwa and Lotus Sun were still a loss over this shocking humanoid gift box in front of them. The courier in charge of delivering the gift box was provided by the merchant. In the face of the customer's dissatisfaction, the courier was slightly helpless. "Miss Sun, this gift box was completely customized according to your requirements. The key is that it really doesn't look like a coffin at all. Moreover, it looked very exquisite. The workmanship is excellent. Moreover, our boss knows that Miss Sun wants to give it to her boyfriend as a surprise." "No, he's not. He will be in the future. Our gift box took the boss an entire night to make, and he's very proud of it. When you open it, there's a hidden compartment, and it even comes with a baby bed. The courier little brother rubbed his hands together. Their boss had actually already taken this step into account. No girl could resist the thought of loving the person she liked for the rest of her life, and then having babies. Often, it only took a few design elements related to babies to increase the overflowing maternal instincts of these girls. This was the general trend. It was precisely because of this that there were more and more mother fans these days. Sure enough, after hearing this, Lotus Sun couldn't hold back anymore and immediately made up her mind. No need to say anymore, I'll buy it. Thus, 10 minutes later, Ajwa delivered a truck of limited edition crispy noodle snacks and a humanoid gift box to the entrance of the Wong family small villa. Mother Wong, who had come out to help sign for the gifts, was startled. Little Joie, these are gifts for sure, Fu, but I'm not the one giving them. I'm just in charge of escorting them. Odd, Joie said as he wiped at his sweat. AI, just come, you don't have to give anything, you're too polite. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Mother Wong focused all her attention on this very distinctive humanoid gift box on the side. Ajwa immediately became nervous. Don't be anxious. Let me explain. Little Joie, you don't need to explain. Mother Wong was dazed for a long while before she shook her head. Children are all grown up. It's easy to hold it in during growth and development, so it's normal for them to need their own outlet. It's not like that, Annie, I know. Ling Ling's situation is special, and normal people definitely can't take it. So this must be specially made, right? Special materials won't spoil so easily. Ajwa dropped his forehead into his hand, feeling like he couldn't explain himself at all. This really isn't, I understand, little Joie. Thank you for being so thoughtful. No, Auntie, this really isn't inflatable. Inflatable sandbag? That material is too lousy. Oh, so Annie was talking about a sandbag. Then it's fine. Chapter 1698. After successfully delivering the box, this seemingly harmless courier little brother quickly pedaled away from the Wong family's small villa on his tricycle. After driving the tricycle to a remote corner, he dialed a number. The person on the other end of the line said something to him, and the little brother quickly replied, "Yes, boss. The custom-made gift box has arrived." Oh, that is to say, I have to find another body, right? Then I have to directly abandon this body? I see. Do you want me to make it look like a car accident? Don't worry, boss, this subordinate will definitely do it properly. After hanging up the phone, the courier little brother's pupils quickly dimmed and then split into tentacles. He rode the tricycle to the nearest road and magnified his perception. After searching for several minutes, he finally fixed his target on a Tesla hybrid electric and spirit power vehicle that was driving over on autopilot from afar. A family of 3 was happily sitting in the back seat of the vehicle, and he sped up on the tricycle. Bang! A loud bang. The vehicle collided with a huge explosion. With his body burning in flames, he jumped on the tricycle, lifted the roof, and saw a man and a woman whose faces had been disfigured from the collision tightly hugging an unconscious girl. Everything was as he had expected. At this moment, human kinship played a crucial role. The little girl, who was only 10 years old, was immediately protected by her parents after the collision and did not die. And this was the result he wanted to see. Mission accomplished. He couldn't help curling his lips, and an invisible golden light separated from his body and attached itself to the little girl's body. From the next moment onwards, he was no longer himself. Her name was Chen Xiaomo. She was the sole survivor of a car accident with a courier little brother. At the same time, she was one of the great old ones who had continuously attached themselves to human consciousness on Earth. She was the same as the ultimate hunter among the great old ones. This group also had an exclusive code name. It was called Thought Plague. On the other side, Wang Ling had received a lot of birthday presents. Super Chun, Hero Gua, and Little Peanut had actually arrived first. After handing over the presents to Wang Ling, the 3 of them sneaked into the house, as if they had secrets to tell Wang Ling. Wang Ling was dazed when he heard Super Chen's words. "Do you know, Wang Ling? I think Lotus Sun wants to give herself to you." It wouldn't have mattered if someone else had said this, but when Super Chan said it, a bead of sweat immediately broke out on his forehead. You want to give yourself to him? There was no need for that. How could he accept a living person as a gift? Most importantly, he felt that Lotus Sun was useless and not as delicious as crispy noodle snacks. In addition, Wang Ling had no intention of dating at all. If he accepted this gift, what if he was misunderstood? These were all questions he had to consider. As the saying went, a rabbit didn't eat the grass near its burrow. Wang Ling had never felt that their high school relationship was reliable, and he felt that Lotus Sun had still been hot-headed for the moment. Furthermore, his attitude toward her was purely that of friendship, and it was impossible for him to consider long-term development at this stage. No, not just at this stage, but also in the future. Wang Ling, since we're already here, we should take things as they come. She's already so obvious, so you'll just accept it? Hirogwa said, Don't worry, we brothers will definitely support you fully, but isn't a little too introverted to fall in love now. Old Pan won't be happy, said Little Peanut. She's a pedantic old fogey, Hirogwa retorted. Besides, how can this be called dating? It's clearly called promoting friendship. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun are in the process of promoting friendship, waiting for each other to grow up. Wang Ling, what F*** King waiting for each other to grow up? Ling Ling, Miss Lotus has brought you a birthday present. You have to thank her properly later. Let's go out for dinner or something. At that moment, Mother Wang brought Lotus Sun's birthday present to Wang Ling. He was very satisfied with a pile of custom-made crispy noodle snacks in a giant gift box. Next to this gift box was a human-shaped gift box, which made Wang Ling want to return it. The weather's pretty good today, Wang Ling. Happy birthday to you. We'll take our leave first. Super Chun was already grinning from ear to ear in his heart. He hurriedly patted Hirogwa and Little Peanut on the shoulders and practically chased them out of Wang Ling's room before quickly disappearing. It could be said that Super Chin's insight wasn't bad. Wang Ling felt that if he really liked Lotus Sun, Super Chin's move would definitely be the most powerful assistant. To be honest, Wang Ling had planned to directly send Lotus Sun back, but when he saw this human-shaped gift box, he felt that something wasn't right. Don't bother. The secondary eye's anti-control ability is ineffective. Wang Ling glanced out the window and spoke telepathically to Ajwa, who was lying in ambush outside the villa. He had been waiting outside the Wang family's small villa for an opportunity to act, but hadn't expected to sense Wang Ling's dead fish eyes staring at him from his room on the second floor. For a moment, Ajwa felt a little disappointed. As expected of Shifu, his insight was unparalleled, but from Wang Ling's tone just now, Ajwa had sensed some seriousness. Could it be that there was something wrong with the gift box? Given Shifu's temper, if he had already known that the gift box contained his mistress, he would have directly sent her back without even opening the box. But now, Wang Ling hadn't done that. Ajwa suddenly realized what the problem was. He immediately went upstairs and saw Lord Ma and Loopy Toad sitting around the human-shaped gift box as they examined it. What on earth is going on? Ajwa asked. There's something wrong with the gift box. Miss Rome can't come out, Loopy Toad said. Ajwa, how is that possible? Loopy Toad, someone has tampered with the gift box. It will explode when opened, and the force of the explosion won't be small, so I'm afraid a lot of innocent people will be affected. In addition, the explosion may cause cosmic energy radiation, which will cause irreversible damage. Looking at what we've seen so far, it's probably the work of those old rulers. The god of the grave? It could be him, or it could be his followers, Loopy Toad said. Of course, little Master Ling told me all this. You can't open it by force. If you do, Miss Rome may suffer unbearable pain. Even if she can be resurrected, there's no guarantee that her soul will remain intact under the intense pain. Loopy Toad said, of course, apart from that, there are also crispy noodle snacks in the gift box, which are all custom-made, out-of-print flavors. It would be a pity if they exploded. Ajwa, it seemed that this was the main reason why they couldn't open it by force. Then what do we do now? Ajwa asked. Loopy Toad, We can only let Lord Ma try first and see if he can somehow send Miss Rong out of the box alone. Chapter 1699. Using the teleportation spell to locate the target. Lord Ma's mood at that moment was extremely complicated and extremely nervous. As a man in love, he actually had a feeling that this man next to him said that he wanted to save crispy noodles and acted like a role model for our generation. But in fact, the one he really wanted to save was Lotus Sundae. It was just that he didn't say it out loud because of his personality. He didn't know if his intuition was right, but rescuing Lotus Sun had impressively become his #1 mission, and it was very obvious that he could only succeed, he couldn't fail. If he couldn't save her, he felt that he was probably going to die. As a toilet bowl that had been used by the men of the Wong family in turn, and the only man who had seen the buttocks of the men of the Wong family, he was now the strongest among the gremlins who had been enlightened, and the only gremlin who had formed an ill-fated relationship with the cosmic god tree. For the first time, Lord Ma had a serious attitude, as if he were performing surgery, and transported a specific person. The next second, there was a flash of light, and next to Wang Ling, Lord Ma, who was covered in cold sweat, instantly disappeared, to be replaced by a soft body covered in talismans. Because she had been in the human-shaped gift box for too long, and also because she had overheard the conversation outside, she had been a little nervous, causing Lotus Sun to feel a little short of oxygen. Now that she had been rescued by Lord Ma, her legs immediately turned to jelly. At first, she was going to fall toward Ajwa, but he didn't intend to help her up at all. Instead, he secretly used the gravitation spell to turn Lotus Sun around, and she instantly fell on Wang Ling. Lotus Sun, Wang Ling, the two of them looked at each other in dismay. Only Lotus Sun's face heated up, and she hurriedly let go. At that moment, Ajwa walked over with a natural expression on his face, as if nothing had happened. "That's great. Miss Lotus is fine. But it seems that this matter hasn't been resolved yet." It was true that Lord Ma had saved Lotus Sundae, but in fact this couldn't be called saving, because Lord Ma had taken advantage of the fact that the gift box hadn't been paying attention to take his place. He had ensured that there was always a person lying inside the human-shaped gift box so that it wouldn't explode. Of course, this was also the best method that Lord Ma had chosen after comprehensive consideration. He could save Lotus Sun and shift the risk to himself. He was just a toilet bowl. Even if the gift box exploded in the end, he wouldn't feel any pain. Wang Ling fully acknowledged Lord Ma's performance. Unlike ordinary human cultivators, it was Wang Ling who bestowed the souls of the gremlins they enlightened. Therefore, Lord Ma's move of exchanging a leopard cat for a crown prince, swapping himself, and would make things much easier. Wang Ying cooperated well. He had been watching on the side for a long time, and knew what Wang Ling was thinking at the moment. He immediately took this humanoid gift box and used the warp shrinking technique to get far away from Earth to another corner of the universe. This was the place where Wang Ying and Sun Yinger often played the planet wall tapping technique. God knows how many spirits of planets have been harmed by him. Therefore, it was the most suitable time to detonate it. In any case, these planet spirits would be repaired by him in the future. Bang! A few seconds later, a huge explosion came from the depths of the universe. A huge mushroom cloud appeared out of thin air, accompanied by a powerful explosion that extended for several light years, blasting everything in its surroundings into pieces. Cultivators below the Tao God realm couldn't hear it. Wang Ling's ears twitched as he looked in a certain direction in the air. Following his line of sight, he saw that it was the location of the explosion. The scale of the explosion was bigger than Wang Ling had actually expected. This was because the spirits of the planets had also been detonated at the same time, resulting in a chain of explosions that were like toppling dominoes, instantly increasing the range and power of the explosion to an even greater level. It was hard to imagine what kind of destruction it would cause if something of this scale happened on Earth. It was likely that the entire solar system would vanish, and no ordinary person could set up this kind of method. Then, Wang Ying returned with Lord Ma, who had been repaired in an instant. Lord Ma had personally experienced the explosion. Although he was the most senior of the gremlins, his face clearly didn't look too good. He shuddered slowly, still feeling some lingering fear. He had never experienced an explosion of this scale before. If it hadn't been for the special nature of enlightened gremlins, it would have been difficult for him to survive. "Teacher Ma, what on earth happened?" Ajwa imitated the tone of a very popular ghost animal video recently, but Wang Ling rolled his eyes at him. "Sure, Fu, don't blame me. I just wanted to liven up the atmosphere." Ajwa smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, Lord Ma. It's all because of me." Lotus Sun blamed herself a little. "This has nothing to do with Miss Rong. Even if it had been someone else lying in the gift box, the other party would have done the same. It was just that Miss Rong happened to be being used." Lord Ma thought for a bit and said, "Also, this kind of method isn't something an ordinary person can do. Master asked for leave today to specially build fortifications at home in order to prepare for a rainy day and defend against external enemies. I never thought that these people would actually move so quickly." "Which people?" Lotus Sun asked. "The ones we dealt with before. They were at least at the cosmic level," Lord Ma replied. "But didn't Wang Ling already, since they're cosmic level figures, they must have their own way of resurrecting. They won't be so easily wiped out. Even a speck of ash could be the key to their resurrection." "Then their strength must have been greatly reduced," Lotus Sun said. "That's right. But if these defeated people band together and plan to deal with them together, it'll still be a little troublesome." Lord Ma sighed and said, "When you find a pile of cockroaches crawling all over the floor in the kitchen, there will always be fish that slip through the net with one slap. But if you blow up the kitchen, you might bring disaster to yourself and even your neighbors." Hearing this, Lotus Sun nodded slightly. She knew that this kind of thing wouldn't be easy to deal with, especially for Wang Ling, who had to be cautious in all aspects. "Then, is there anything I can do to help now?" Lotus Sun asked. "It's very simple." At that moment, Loopy Toad jumped onto the table and looked at Lotus Sun as it said, "You just need to protect yourself. Looking at all the signs, they've already set their sights on you. So it's best to upgrade the 6 cores Mysterious Sea." "Upgrade 9 cores?" Lotus Sun was astonished. 9 cores Mysterious Sea. With his combat strength, it's enough. Lord Ma also nodded and said, "But I also sensed something strange in the explosion just now." At that moment, Lord Ma opened his mouth and a transparent ball of light came out. "If your eyesight isn't strong enough, you probably won't be able to see it. I caught this thing in the explosion, and it seems to have the ability to control consciousness." Wang Ling's eyes instantly narrowed, because he saw a transparent worm wriggling in this transparent ball of light, and it gave off the scent of the old rulers. Sure enough, this has something to do with the grave god. Ajwa frowned. "It's very likely that the other party has already infiltrated deep into our midst." Lord Ma said, "This worm can control consciousness, so it can also quietly infect human cultivators. Judging from what they know about us, I'm afraid someone important to Lord Ling has already been infected." Chapter 1700. Lord Ma's reasoning was completely logical. Since an infected person was already next to them, they had to be on guard. Wang Ling closed his eyes and used his search ability to communicate with Book of Sage Immortal remotely. Although he had already sent the book out of this universe, he would still occasionally use it as a remote search engine. After giving it away, the noise from Book of Sage Immortal had indeed decreased a lot, and it was a lot more convenient for Wang Ling to read it now. Because of the long-distance telepathic connection, this annoying iPad wouldn't jump in the face as much and would only give him the answers he wanted. Of course, Wang Ling felt that this could also be Book of Sage Immortal's way of showing weakness. It was probably trying to make amends for its mistakes. Thought Plague. Wang Ling ruminated on this name, which he had obtained from Book of Sage Immortal. This was one of the dirtiest characters among the rulers of the old days. By invading someone's consciousness, they could silently control them. It wasn't just human cultivators, but any living creature with a soul and life would be manipulated by them. Furthermore, the most important thing was the thought plague would constantly change the bodies it had invaded, leaving no trace behind. The final fate of the bodies that it had abandoned would also be clearly arranged, disguised as all kinds of suicides or accidental deaths, so that there was no way to investigate it. But in any case, the seriousness of this matter was enough for Wang Ling to pay attention to it. Based on what was currently known, the thought plague was extremely contagious, especially after switching bodies. Even if the bodies that had been used became corpses, they could also become new sources of infection. This meant that they would leave their seeds in the corpses, and those who came into contact with the seeds would become new infected people. Thus, if this matter wasn't taken seriously, it might spread widely among human cultivators. As the rulers of the old days of the universe, there was currently no way to identify the true bodies of these creatures with the current cultivation methods on Earth. Once they were parasitized, it meant that they would be 100% controlled. So the first thing Wang Ling had to do now was investigate three things. The first was the source of the thought plague. The second was who on Earth had sent these thought plague. The third was who on Earth had been infected and how to prevent it. This is the basic situation Shifu was talking about. After summarizing Wang Ling's telepathic message, Ajua verbally relayed the incident to the others in a simple and clear way. Now, as a disciple, he was not only used as a scapegoat, but also for various other purposes. When he said this, Ajua's mind was filled with a scene from a movie. On a dark, windy, and stormy night, Wang Ling appeared in front of him dressed like a mafia boss and asked him, Translate. What? It's a pleasant surprise. In other words, we need to prove our innocence now. Lord Ma asked. Lord Ma, you don't have to. After all, you're an enlightened gremlin. Master can tell at a glance. As for the others, don't even think about escaping. Ajua smiled and said, How about this, one by one? We'll ask each other questions to prove our innocence. There were no outsiders here except for Ajua, Lotus Sun, and Loopy Toad. It wasn't Wang Ling's idea to prove his innocence, but Ajua's own ideas. Wang Ling didn't stop him and just watched the show. When Ajua said this, he saw that Lotus Sun's face was bright red, as if it would burn at any moment. How about this? I'll start first. You asked me first, Ajua said as he looked at Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad reacted quickly. Do you like highlands or flat ground? Ajua, flat ground. Ajua. Then what's your favorite food? Bone sticks, big meat flies, and so on? Loopy Toad. Of course it's bone sticks with big meat flies in the middle. Very good. Proof complete. One man and one dog cooperated very well, and after asking each other questions, they high-fived each other. Lotus Sun, that's it. Ajua nodded. Of course. Then, Miss Roan, do you want to try? Lotus Sun, I'll try. She had thought that he might ask some tricky questions, so she had been a little worried, but the question just now didn't seem special. So Ajua looked at her and suddenly asked, If a youngster who looks better than Shifu appears in front of you, will you fall in love with him? Lotus Sun was a little surprised by this question, but she still shook her head with a resolute look in her eyes. Of course not. She had always been very sure. The reason why she liked Wang Ling wasn't because of his face. There were so many good-looking young men, and as the eldest daughter of the Sun family, she could summon them at her beck and call. But only Wang Ling was special to her. Hearing this, Ajua's expression was one of triumph as he hurriedly asked, Why? Is it because you like my Shifu? Hearing this, Lotus Sun knew it was bad. She had been tricked by Ajua again. This bad guy, he only knew how to trick her all day long. He was actually asking questions. Furthermore, it was fine if he kept asking, but he was asking this kind of question, and in front of Wang Ling, how was she supposed to answer? She struggled in her heart, then clenched her teeth and braced herself to deny it. Of course not. Ajua was shocked when he heard this. No. So you're fake, Miss Roan. Brother Toad, let's go. Lotus Sun instantly panicked and looked at Ajua with an expression of admitting defeat. Yes. I like Wang Ling. That's fine, right? She was in a bad mood, and the shame of being forced to confess in front of Wang Ling made her want to find a hole to crawl into. Wang Ling's expression didn't change much when he heard this. The main thing was that Lotus Sun had already confessed a few times before, and he was probably a little used to it. He knew that Ajwa's love for stirring up trouble was in fact an act of support. But to be honest, Wang Ling felt that it was useless, because he wouldn't like Lotus Sunday. It was said that there was no such thing as pure friendship between men and women, but Wang Ling felt that this wasn't true at all. He had always felt that he and Lotus Sun had this kind of pure friendship. That was right. It was just friendship. Wang Ling turned his head to look at Lord Ma on the side, and seemed to be giving him some instructions telepathically. Lord Ma immediately understood, and then turned to Lotus Sun and bowed respectfully. Then, Miss Rong, please come with me. Where? Lotus Sun asked. Lord Ma. To upgrade Mysterious Sea, of course. Lord Ling has already made an appointment with Senior Golden Lamp, so Miss Rong just needs to come with me to bring Mysterious Sea over. Once it's upgraded to a 9-core spirit sword, Miss Rong will have the ability to protect herself. You won't have to worry about being threatened by the thought plague. With this kind of sword chi protecting you, it will be very difficult for them to invade you. Chapter 1701. Following Monk Golden Lamp into the mountain of Backtrack, Lotus Sun felt like she was revisiting an old place. The last time she had leveled up in the Mysterious Sea here, it just so happened that she had helped Loopy Toad resolve the chaos catastrophe caused by its advancement from a holy beast to a divine beast. This time, she entered again to complete the upgrade of the 9 cores Mysterious Sea. She was unfamiliar with it the first time, but familiar with it the second time. This time, her mood was much calmer than before. She was just a little worried that she wouldn't be able to control the Mysterious Sea after it was upgraded to 9 cores. Miss Rong, you don't need to be nervous. The success rate for upgrading the 9 cores Mysterious Sea is 100%. Since you've already fused it several times, the subsequent fuses won't be that difficult, Monk Golden Lamp said. As for why Ling Jinren chose this poor monk to bring Miss Rong here, it's mainly to guard against the surge of energy after the Mysterious Sea is upgraded to a 9-core spirit sword. It's definitely very strong, and I'm worried that I won't be able to control it. Lotus Sun frowned slightly. Her strength had been stuck at the peak late Foundation establishment stage, and she was only a hair's breadth away from the Golden Core stage. Although her battle strength with the Mysterious Sea was far more than that, she couldn't improve her basic realm, and controlling the Mysterious Sea had always been a problem. Just like equipment in games, equipment had a level limit, and if a character's level wasn't high enough, they wouldn't be able to bear the additional attributes of powerful equipment. If she didn't control it properly, it wouldn't just be dangerous for herself, but also for the people around her. This wasn't what Lotus Sun wanted to see. While she was letting her imagination run wild, Tyrant suddenly laughed. Miss Rome, you're thinking too much. Although I've told you before to use Mysterious Sea's power cautiously, I don't think it's worth it. Although this poor monk has said before that Miss Rome should be cautious in using the Mysterious Sea's power, you don't need to worry about controlling it. But isn't it usually that's true in normal circumstances? Spirit swords, magic weapons, and even some high-level talismans in the cultivation world all have realm restrictions. If your realm isn't high enough, you won't be able to use them smoothly. This is because the cultivator's realm is too low and they don't have enough spirit energy. Using these high-level magic treasures consumes a lot of spirit energy, which they can't afford at all. Monk Golden Lamp said, it might seem like a restriction, but the main reason is that you don't have enough spirit energy. What about me? She asked. Miss Rome already has 6 cores on the Mysterious Sea. Haven't you noticed it after using it for so long? This is because Lady Rome doesn't need to worry about the consumption of spiritual power. Monk Jean Deng said, when the mechanism of becoming one with the sword is activated, Mysterious Sea's power is Miss Rome's power. Under such a passive ability, the problem of insufficient spiritual power can be directly ignored. I see. Lotus Sun nodded. At this moment, Sun Yinger also appeared and comforted her. I told you, Rong, you're thinking too much. It's impossible for you to lose control. Even if you do, you still have me. And this time, I feel that you and Ling Jinren have made great progress. Lotus Sun was stunned. Where did I, Sun Yinger? It's really big. Look, this thought plague is so dangerous. There's so many people in Battle Sect, but the first thing he thought of was to help you increase your strength. Sun Yinger wasn't trying to make fun of Lotus Sun like she usually did, but she truly felt that there was a lot of progress between the two of them this time. Although she didn't show it on her face, Lotus Sun was actually overjoyed. On the other side, Ajwa, who had been secretly assisting them all this time, was also very touched. After Lord Ma and Lotus Sun met up with Monk Golden Lamp and left the Wang family's small villa, he stared at Wang Ling, who couldn't wait to open the plastic bag of the custom-made crispy noodle snacks, and asked, "Shifu, do you have some thoughts about Miss Rome?" Wang Ling was very confused, but he didn't deny it. He did indeed have some thoughts. But this was mainly because Lotus Sun had been forced to confess to him after the question and answer session just now. If Lotus Sun continued to stay here, it would be awkward for both of them. Instead of that, it would be better to think of a way to send her away. Besides, Lotus Sun was always in his room, and he couldn't eat crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling had never been in the habit of being stared at while he ate. In the school cafeteria, he usually ate in a corner. This was the basic process. Avoid familiar people as much as possible and force yourself to eat with them. Choose a corner. Snap your fingers. Stop time. Then, you quickly finished everything on your plate. Snap your fingers again, and time returned to the classroom. This way, Wang Ling wouldn't feel uncomfortable being stared at while he ate, and eating wouldn't waste any time. Time stop was a very useful trick. There were times when laziness flared up, and you didn't want to do your homework at night. You could also bring your homework to school in the morning and use time stop to finish it. It wasn't just for himself, but also for Father Wang. There were times when Father Wang really couldn't catch up with the updates, and he would ask Wang Ling to use time stop to temporarily freeze time. This was also one of the main reasons why Father Wang had been able to update for so many years, rain or shine. You would never know what on earth was behind a web novelist who could continuously update. Maybe it was boxes and boxes of ball-proof hair growth fluid. Or maybe it was a son who understood time stop. Lotus Sun was being strengthened, but Wang Ling didn't think it was very reliable to ascertain their identities through interrogations. In the end, an external force was needed. The modern cultivation world couldn't do anything about it, but Wang Zhibao had a corresponding magic treasure in his pants. He took out a bronze mirror called the Immemorial Beauty Mirror, which was the primordial chaos magic treasure of an empress in ancient times. Although it was called a beauty mirror, the truth was that it wouldn't make a person beautiful and would instead directly reflect their barefaced appearance. Wang Ling looked at himself in the mirror and found that his appearance hadn't changed much. He then pointed the mirror at Loopy Toad and found that his dog fur was still as green as before. Loopy Toad, got it, so I'll just give it to the people in Battle Sect to try. But there are too few of them, so it might be troublesome to test them. Also, if there's too much noise, it might alert the enemy. Wang Ling nodded. This was indeed a problem. So in the first round, he decided to only conduct a preliminary test on the core members of Battle Sect to ensure that there were no problems with the higher-ups. As for the scarcity of the beauty mirror, that was even easier. Wang Ling opened his king's eye. He selected the beauty mirror in his hand, and Loopy Toad saw Ctrl+C appear in his left eye and Ctrl+V appear in his right eye. Then, a new beauty mirror was successfully duplicated. Loopy Toad was blank for a moment, and then, as if accustomed to this sight, swallowed the bag of beauty mirrors that it had duplicated. I need some helpers to do the test. Wang Ling spread his hands to indicate that Loopy Toad could choose as it pleased. And Loopy Toad's train of thought was very clear. Almost immediately, it set its sights on Xiang, Yi, and Qin Zong. These two young fellows were the most suitable to be used as support. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated on the mobile game bar. There are no advertisements on the site, so please bookmark and recommend the mobile game bar. If you like the daily life of the Immortal King, please bookmark. The daily life of the Immortal King mobile game bar is updated the fastest. Chapter 1702. Loopy Toad naturally had its own reasons for choosing Qinzong and Xiangyi. It felt that these two living treasures were very useful, and their identities weren't simple. Now that they had become guest elders of Battle Sect, they were the same as its own people. Since both of them had come to learn from Wang Ling, Loopy Toad felt that it could worm its way into becoming friends. When all was said and done, it was an old member of Battle Sect, and it was reasonable for an old man to bring along a newcomer. But while a guest elder was an honorary position in Battle Sect, it was on the same level as an elder, so Loopy Toad couldn't act like an old man in front of these two people and had to be polite as much as possible. At 8 o'clock that night, in front of Battle Sect's guest elder branch, Loopy Toad met up with Qinzong and Xiangyi. When it found them, they were playing chess in the courtyard with the air of great generals. They didn't give in to each other and were racking their brains. Of course, playing chess also depended on luck. In order to ensure fairness, Qinzong would evenly distribute his luck when playing chess. This way, he could fully ensure the fun of playing chess. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any gaming experience at all if he won all kinds of baffling things. Loopy Toad didn't disturb them and quietly waited for them to finish playing chess. After watching them for a long time, it realized that Qinzong and Xiangyi's faces were indescribably delicate and handsome. Their fair and translucent skin and sharp edges gave them the feeling of protagonists. Before planning to make this in-depth contact, it wasn't that Loopy Toad hadn't asked around about these two people and had a general understanding of Qinzong and Xiangyi's situation. In their own worlds, the two of them had almost reached the top, but in the end, they hadn't expected to be forcibly hit by a wave of dimensionality reduction when they came to Wang Ling's world line. Even the universe-level experts they had encountered weren't on the same level. It was only after coincidentally running into the Heartless Ancestor this time that the two of them realized that there was no end to learning. Loopy Toad had to add one more thing. That was, in order to ensure that they were serious enough in their studies, Xiangyi's real body had switched back with his shadow after meeting his wife. The one in front of Loopy Toad now was the real Xiangyi. I lost again. Xiangyi scratched his head in annoyance. Loopy Toad didn't wait for a few minutes before the two of them decided the winner. Qinzong had a complete victory without relying on luck. To be honest, after coming to Wang Ling's world, he had in fact wanted to meet Gu Xuanji, but hadn't been able to find the right opportunity. In fact, after coming to Wang Ling's Toad's world, Loopy Toad had wanted to meet Gu Xuanji, but he had never been able to. Toad's Loopy Toad's Wang Xuanji han for Gu. Into for Ad Xuanji. In Y zone. In Toad for 4 for Chun for him, that zone, that he not is for. Gentlemen, I have a mission here, Loopy Toad said as it gave them a concise and comprehensive account of the thought plague. Toad immediately, Qin and Qin. Qin, Toad Ling and that and Toad. 2 for Qin. And and in Yang. And, Toad. And Ling for and. The source. Qinzong cupped his chin and thought carefully. When we were in the Science and Technology City, Senior Li Xian and Senior Zhang Zijin did not act with us. Could it be that they were invaded, or that they came out of the Science and Technology City with something that could achieve a large-scale invasion? Loopy Toad and Xiangyi were blank when they heard this, because as far as they knew, the only thing Li Xian and Zhang Zijin had brought out of the Technology City was the chip that Wang Ming had used his brainwaves to invade the wealthy businessman Jiabu Gui. It couldn't be. Could it be such a coincidence? Although Qinzong didn't have Super Qin's blessed mouth, his unparalleled luck attribute allowed him to hit the nail on the head sometimes. Loopy Toad and Xiangyi were instantly on high alert. If the source of the infection really was Wang Ming, after the thought plague invaded Wang Ming's body, given Wang Ming's powerful brainwaves, it might be able to carry out a large-scale invasion in an instant. And the serious consequences of this invasion had already reached an inestimable point. Then where should we start now? Xiangyi asked. How about we go look for Senior Gu? Qinzong suggested at that moment. Xiangyi and Loopy Toad were silent. It would have been fine if Qinzong hadn't mentioned it, but now that he had, it was very likely that the first person they were looking for, Gu Xuanji, had already been invaded. After Loopy Toad left, Wang Ling noticed an interlude in the news. It was a car accident near the Wang family's small villa. A Spirit power-driven tricycle delivering packages had crashed into an automatic car. The delivery little brother and a couple had died together. Before they died, the couple had used their bodies to protect their daughter, resulting in 3 deaths and 1 injury. Car accidents happened every day, so no one would find it strange. But it just so happened that this delivery little brother was the one who had delivered the human-shaped gift box to Lotus Sun previously. That coffin... Oh no, the human-shaped gift box had been problematic to begin with, so there was a high chance that the delivery little brother had already been invaded. In the explosion of the car accident, the delivery man and the poor couple were burnt beyond recognition, and their faces were almost indistinguishable. But Wang Ling had the king's eye. Wang Ling could still use his power of sight to directly restore their original appearances. Based on the force of the explosion at the scene, it was a miracle that the little girl had survived. But not only had she survived, she didn't have many injuries on her body, except for a few burn marks. Wang Ling couldn't help but start to wonder if this little girl was really a little girl. Wang Ling first looked up the delivery receipt number of the delivery little brother who had delivered the human-shaped gift box. He could directly find out his work number from the receipt number and then file a complaint with the customer service staff to get his exact personal information. Then, he remotely used Book of Sage Immortal to find out the girl's name, Chun Xiaomu. He then followed this information to find out about Chun Xiaomu's parents. After getting the information on the 3, he directly teleported to the hospital morgue. Outside the morgue of 9th Cultivation People's Hospital, several family members were crying. Wang Ling could hear their heart-wrenching cries through the thick iron door. He sighed in his heart. Resurrecting these 3 people directly went against Heavenly Tao. But after all, the source of their deaths was that ancient creature, and it wasn't an ordinary accident. Thus, Wang Ling felt that resurrecting these 3 people was actually harmless. Of course, even if he was on the Heavenly Tao white list, the process still seemed a little irregular. Thus, when Wang Ling teleported to the hospital morgue, he called Death Heavenly Tao, who is currently guarding number 60 high school's entrance, over. In this way, people were resurrected by Death Heavenly Tao. What did that have to do with Wang Ling? Chapter 1703. When Death Heavenly Tao had been summoned by Wang Ling, he was still wearing number 60 high school school guard captain uniform. The original school guard captain, Old Li, had already reached retirement age, so he had given the position to Death Heavenly Tao. Death Heavenly Tao was moved and added 200 years to Old Li's lifespan in the Book of Life and Death, which was simply a huge gain. No one would have thought that their colleague who went to work with them every day was a man who could freely control other people's lives. But even if Death Heavenly Tao carried out the resurrection itself, it would still be considered a violation of the rules. When Tao Ancestor Wang had established the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee back then, he had left behind a rule that those who had no choice but to be resurrected had to first be put on file. That was, after the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee was established, the 6 main Heavenly Tao would review and approve it before the twin brothers could carry out the resurrection. The brothers actually had a division of labor for the entire resurrection process. For example, Wang Ling's older brother, Survival Heavenly Tao, was mainly responsible for resurrecting people who had died subjectively. So what was subjectively? For example, people who died from illness near the end of their lifespans, or even suicide were all considered subjectively. In contrast, Death Heavenly Tao dealt with deaths that were more like accidental deaths. But this express delivery little brother situation was a little more complicated. While it was true that he had been invaded by the thought plague and had gotten into a car accident early, the truth was that at the same time as the car accident, the illness caused by long-term overtime work manifested itself in that moment. Almost at the same time that he was killed, the express delivery little brother suffered a myocardial infarction, which resulted in sudden cardiac arrest and suffocation. Not only that, Because he had been traveling around on his little tricycle for a long time, he had also suffered from severe rheumatism. The moment he was hit, all his bones cracked. The moment he was hit, this poor express delivery little brother died, suddenly for multiple reasons. Furthermore, each of his deaths happened almost at the same time, and they were all fatal injuries. The thought plague which had invaded his body clearly hadn't noticed this, and was still controlling his body. In the end, he was directly burnt to a crisp by the explosion and was completely unrecognizable. Too tragic. Death Heavenly Tao sighed as it explained the cause of this express delivery little brother's death. Cut the crap. Just tell me, can he be resurrected? Wang Ying's expression was heavy. One Wang Ling and one Wang Ying sandwiched Death Heavenly Tao, and Death Heavenly Tao himself was terrified. His pupils contracted slightly as he said timidly, "Yes, since Ling Jinren and Jinrening have spoken, how can I refuse?" Urging people to be resurrected in violation of the rules was essentially a serious violation of the law, but with Wang Ling and Wang Ying behind them, Death Heavenly Tao had some confidence. The rules back then were set by Tao Ancestor Wang. If I were to resurrect these humans and receive any punishment, the two of you must help me. Death Heavenly Tao bowed. You might not believe it, but as one of the 6 main Heavenly Taos, the Heavenly Tao of Death is also very afraid of death. Cut the crap. Do it now, Wang Ying said concisely. Yes, Death Heavenly Tao didn't refuse anymore. He took a step back and released a pitch-black spirit flame from his fingertip. Then, he raised his finger and pointed it at the charred corpse's head. The corpse, which had been burned to the point where it was no longer recognizable, was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He got off easy. This is a brand new body, Death Heavenly Tao said as he crossed his arms. After resurrecting a person, the person would also have a completely healthy body. No matter what kind of pain or illness they had suffered before, the resurrected body would be completely healthy. But modern human cultivators had some bad habits that were hard to change, and in the end, they would still develop into a subhealthy state. Regarding this, it was truly a pity. As if he had just woken up from a long dream, the deliverer man woke up from the sterile bed in the morgue and rubbed his eyes. He remembered that he had just been walking on a long and narrow golden bridge, and golden men floating in the air next to it ladled a bowl of golden soup for everyone standing on the bridge. The mangpa soup that people talked about was actually the same kind of thing as this golden soup. This was a tool used by the Heavenly Tao to block out the soul's memories of its previous life. But just as the courier little brother was about to drink it, the golden soup in his hand was ablaze with a black flame, and he was so frightened that he knocked the bowl over. At the scene of the golden bridge, in a mess, he was sucked away by the crack caused by the black flame. When he woke up, he saw 3 men standing in front of him with their arms crossed, surrounding his bed. You guys, he was scared out of his wits, but it reminded him of something. While he was being invaded by the thought plague, even though his body was completely out of his control, he still remembered what he had done. The thought plague would never have thought that the person whose body it had destroyed would be resurrected under such circumstances and still have all the memories of when he was under its control. All you need to know is that you got into a car accident, and we saved you. Now, don't ask anything else. Just tell us everything you did while you were under its control, Wang Ying said coldly. Bow bye, this courier little brother said, as if he had been enlightened. Bow bye? Yes. When my body was under its control, I went to a company that I've never seen before. I've never seen such a mobile company before. A mobile company? Death Heavenly Tao was also dazed when he heard this. Could it be that the company is in some kind of aircraft? Floating offices that didn't have a fixed address were indeed very popular now, and were now the mainstream trend for companies in the future in the cultivation world. Although the company's location was constantly changing, it could use this advantage to easily recruit talents from all over the country and introduce talent from all over the country by setting up an aerial office. The biggest advantage of this type of floating office was that the boat would float by each designated city on a fixed schedule, so that many workers from other places could take the company's shuttle bus back home, often to visit. But there were still very few companies that could master this kind of cutting-edge technology. Only a large financial group that was as rich as a country would have the material and financial resources to operate it. However, the bow-by company that the courier little brother mentioned seemed to be a new term among the limited number of aerial companies. Before this, there were plenty of advertisements for those famous aerial companies, but Wang Ling had never heard of this bow-by company. He didn't know why, but he felt that the company's name was familiar. Chapter 1704. Neither Wang Ling nor Wang Ying had heard of bow-by group before, as if it had popped up out of thin air. Wang Ling used his phone to look up the company's business information online, and when he couldn't find it, he instantly understood. It turned out that this was an aerial company that had been hidden away. Furthermore, from the internal scale described by this courier little brother, it seemed that this bow-by company had already reached a certain scale and hadn't just been set up in a hurry. There were many employees inside, and all of them wore thick white protective suits. Listening to the description, it seemed a little like a cultivation chemical company. The courier little brother did his best to answer. I saw a huge graveyard, ranch, farming in the air. Wang Ying and Wang Ling were startled. No, it's a graveyard. In the core area of this company's floating ship, behind an encrypted iron gate, there's a huge graveyard in the air, as if it's excavating something. Yes, that's right. I remember now. There's a huge skeleton in the center. It looks like a very large creature, but I can't tell what it is. Its tail alone is dozens of feet high, and the nameplate on it is engraved with the words SCB Special Faction. Sheltered creatures? Wang Ling was a little surprised by this answer, because in the small corpse painting, he had already asked Li Xian and Zhang Zizi to lock up all the sheltered creatures that the heartless ancestor had hidden as he traveled the universe. Among the strongest of them, apart from 096, who had become a rabbit guarding Wang Ling's backyard, 005, 007, and 009, these sheltered creatures of the old faction were all immobilized in the king's eye and were extremely well behaved. Go to sleep. After the interrogation was more or less complete, Death Heavenly Tao snapped its fingers to make this courier little brother forget everything. At the same time, it set the unfortunate couple on the side to be automatically resurrected in half an hour. Of course, if word got out that the dead had been resurrected, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. On Heavenly Tao's side, Death Heavenly Tao had already ordered a few little golden men to deal with the aftermath. This was to knock some sense into everyone who knew about this so that they would physically forget all their memories of this matter. Apart from that, Death Heavenly Tao had already ordered Heavenly Court to temporarily forget that this poor couple had any memories of having a daughter after being invaded by the thought plague in the car accident. When the little girl returned, they would automatically recall it. After setting everything up, Death Heavenly Tao looked at Wang Ling and Wang Ying and said worriedly, Ling Jinrening, I don't think it's that simple. Ling Jinren already has control over the living creatures of the Old Days faction and the Great Tao faction, so it's a little strange that new living creatures have appeared. What do you think? Wang Ying asked. Death Heavenly Tao took a deep breath and said, judging from the way things were handled, there were at least 3 people involved. One was that undying cockroach by Zhe. The second was the grave god, and the third was the heartless ancestor. He should not be completely dead. That kind of ancient figure had too many ways to survive. As long as the heartless patriarch separates a trace of his brainwave before he dies, there's a certain chance of survival. So you're saying that this is the Avengers? Interesting. Wang Ying curled her lips. He thought of how these cockroaches, who had already been smacked to death, had gathered together again to discuss a plan to deal with Wang Ling. That kind of ugliness was really hilarious. Although we don't know what the purpose of these 3 people is, if they decide to join forces, I don't think we can underestimate them. We must never underestimate them, Death Heavenly Tao said. What's the use of having more people? I can deal with them alone. Killing them will be like killing ants. Wang Ying sneered. He didn't care about this kind of allied army at all. mainly because he was very confident in his own methods. His battle strength wasn't that different from Wang Ling's, and he just lacked the king's eye. In his opinion, it was enough to kill these 3 weak clowns. That's true, but we still have to figure out their ultimate goal. Death Heavenly Dao gave a rational analysis. First of all, what on earth is this Bao Bai group doing? From this Courier Little Brother's description, it's a very large company with a lot of employees. It won't take a short period of time to set up. What on earth is the other party excavating in the cemetery behind the Iron Gate in the core area? That's also a problem. Second, what on earth is the special faction that they currently have in their hands? I think the key is to find this special faction's host. Death Heavenly Dao's analysis was clear and logical, and Wang Ling naturally agreed with the questions it had raised above. It was just that Death Heavenly Dao's analysis of these Avengers behind the scenes was beyond his expectations. That by Zhe, Wang Ling had erased all the world lines, but he actually still existed. Wang Ling used to think that he was the only monster, but now he realized that in some sense, this Bai Zhe who haunted him like a ghost was also a monster. If they ran into each other again this time, Wang Ling would definitely think of a way to completely wipe him clean and put an end to any future troubles. For Wang Ling, his current plan was very clear. Find the little girl who had been infected by the thought plague, Chen Xiaomu. At the same time, inside Bao Bai Group's floating ship, a secret plan was also quietly underway. Wang Ming had appeared here, but at that moment, he was no longer Wang Ming. His eyes were cloudy, and his pupils had turned into tentacles. He had shockingly become a puppet of the thought plague. He stood in the middle of a huge cemetery. Countless people in white in thick protective suits were using shovels, gold brushes, and all kinds of sophisticated scanning equipment to explore and excavate the site. New skeleton of a special shelter, SCB-0. 1598, has been discovered. SEAL team, please get ready. The aura of the skeleton is very strong. Explosives team, please get ready to explode. Establish a barrier. Everyone, be quick. Yes. In an instant, dozens of Bai Bao Group employees answered in unison. Citizens of Bao Bai, you are about to witness a great piece of history that will be remembered by the world. Wang Ming's face was enveloped in the light of the fire, and his cheeks were bright red. He spoke excitedly with a strong desire for revenge. Wang Ming had miscalculated. He had never thought that his body would be controlled by this person. Although he had the help of the grave god and Bai Zhe, he had obtained a new body and a brain with tremendous potential. He just needed to inject a trace of the god brain's brainwave into it. And in time, he would obtain a brain that was even more powerful than the god brain. Although it wasn't his style to live under someone else's roof, the heartless patriarch was well aware that if they didn't join forces at that moment, there was no way they could deal with that terrifying man on Earth. The 3 of you didn't expect this, did you? You feigned civility and pretended to get close to me in an attempt to enter Bao Bai. But I've already calculated this. Holding Wang Ming's body, the heartless patriarch stared at the 3 people on the stake in front of him, Li Xian, Zhang Zidin, and Jai Yin. Among them, Li Xian and Zhang Zidin were seriously injured. Although they didn't feel much pain, they didn't expect that their plan to enter Bao Bai would be directly foiled. At the same time, there was something even more unexpected. The target that these Bao Bai employees were digging in this sky cemetery. It was a special kind of ancient creature that had existed at the beginning of the chaos. In the long years of history, they had a resounding and domineering name. They were called dragons. Chapter 1705. At the very beginning, when chaos had given birth to the order of the universe, there had indeed been a huge race that had now been overlooked. At that time, the concept of shelter hadn't even existed yet. The powerful and prosperous dragon clan and the great old ones stood as equals, and together they controlled the deep, dark, chaotic, and twisted universe. Until one day, the Dragon Clan's stronghold, Mount Wanlong, exploded overnight for some inexplicable reason, and the leader of the Dragon Clan, King Wanlong, was killed on the spot. Thus, the power of balance gradually became unbalanced. Without a leader, Mount Wanlong suffered a devastating blow, and a large part of it was buried here. A small number of lucky survivors were treated as shelter creatures by the Great Old Ones, and were forced to accept long-term servitude until the last dragon couldn't accept this kind of coercion and committed suicide. Li Xian and Zhang Zidong were tied to the stake, beads of cold sweat running down their cheeks. Neither of them had expected things to turn out like this. According to Wang Ming's original plan, they would follow the will of the controlled Wang Ming and go deep into the heart of this place. Then, they would act according to the situation and wait for Wang Ming to break free of the thought-plagued restraints, wreak havoc here, and tear everything down. But when the appointed time came, Li Xian and Zhang Zidong didn't get to see the real Wang Ming take control of their bodies again. Thus, in that instant, both of them simultaneously felt that the situation was far from good. After all, they were skeletons that had come out of the Supreme Corpse wrapping diagram. Their bodies were illusory images formed by the king's eye, so they wouldn't feel any pain. However, it was different when Jia Yin was captured. If the land they were standing on had really been Mount Wanlong back then and was now known as the Dragon Graveyard, then there would definitely be a lot of dragon bones buried here. Although these dragons were already dead, their dragon breaths still lingered. Given Jia Yin's physique, there was no way she could stay here for too long. Thus, they had to think of a way to get out. But if they left, Wang Ming, who had yet to take control of his body, would be isolated and helpless. It was a dilemma. Although they weren't in good shape right now, both of them thought that if they worked together, it wouldn't be a problem for them to escape with Jia Yin and Wang Ming. But now, the development of the situation had far exceeded their expectations. The people from Bao Bai Group were excavating the skeletons beneath the dragon graveyard. Although he didn't know what their goal was, this was a matter of great importance and wasn't something the two of them could handle. Right now, Jia Yin would be in more danger with every second she stayed here. Tied to the stake, Li Xian and Zhang Zidong tacitly agreed that they could not wait any longer. The two of them looked at each other for a while. The next second, in the distance, a huge meteor shining with bright flames fell from the sky, a shadow that blotted out the sky and covered the earth in an instant. It was such a familiar operation. Those who had some understanding of it would know that it must have been done by Li Xian. There was a burst of panic at the scene. A giant meteorite is approaching. Missile team, prepare to intercept them. On the command deck, the members of the command team issued an order. A few projectiles shot out from Bao Bai Group's Dragon's Graveyard command post, heading straight for the gigantic meteorite artifact in the sky. The sound of a huge explosion was accompanied by powerful flames, instantly turning the sky red. Li Xian couldn't help curling his lips. It was nonsense to think that such an explosion could grind his meteorite to pieces. He hadn't randomly selected meteorites every time. This meteorite, for example, was an iron meteorite naturally formed from the heavy metals of the universe and was indestructible. Unless the explosive power of a missile reached a certain level, it would be impossible for it to destroy his meteorite. "Sir, it's very dangerous here. Please evacuate as soon as possible." At that moment, a Bao Bai staff member stepped forward and urged Wu Xian to leave quickly. There was basically no need for him to say anything more. If this meteorite were to fall down, Wu Xian would be able to calculate just how strong the impact would be. But his expression was calm as he stared at the meteorite that was about to hit the ground. Then, he couldn't help laughing. "Star Wanderer, Li Xian. As expected, you live up to your name throughout the ages." He knew that this was all Li Xian's doing, but it wasn't that he didn't have any countermeasures. In the next second, a man holding a black umbrella, wearing a khaki trench coat and sunglasses, appeared behind Wu Xian. His appearance was very sudden, like a flash of lightning, and his whole body was covered with a kind of terrifying electric current. The man's deep voice came, "Sir, what do you want me to do? Destroy it? But be careful not to damage the ground," Wu Xian said coldly. Hearing Wu Xian's words, the man behind him immediately nodded and said, "Yes." In the dragon graveyard, The dazzling flames from the sky were still accompanied by the meteorite that was falling at an extremely fast speed, emitting a chilling power. Facing the impending impact, all the Bao Bai staff members below were panic-stricken, except for Wu Xen and the man in the khaki trench coat who suddenly appeared behind him. The man lifted his feet and walked forward slowly. His unhurried posture made people feel anxious. He put the black umbrella in his hand on his back and took out a diamond glove from his trench coat. The moment the glove appeared, Li Xian and Zhang Zipei's eyes were attracted by the pocket watch at the same time, and then they revealed a look of disbelief. The strong power of chaos seeped out of the diamond glove, telling Li Xian and Zhang Zipei that this diamond glove was not ordinary. The concentration of chaos was at least 80%. The chaos ship rudder that the Wuxin ancestor had taken out earlier was already terrifying enough, and now there was a glove with at least 80% chaos concentration. Were these chaos objects with high concentrations so worthless now? Both of them stared at the man in the khaki trench coat in front of them, only to see the man put the diamond glove on his right hand unhurriedly, pretending to show it off and admire it for a while. To be able to control such a highly concentrated chaos object, the man's own combat strength had already explained everything. The power of chaos objects far exceeded that of world-defying magic artifacts, and with every 10% increase in the concentration of chaos, the stronger the backlash on the user's body. Therefore, unless one's combat strength had reached a certain level, one might be turned into ashes just by taking out a chaos object with 80% chaos concentration and holding it in one's hand for a while, let alone wearing it. The man in the khaki trench coat looked calm. At this moment, he finally turned his gaze to the huge meteorite in the sky that Li Xian had summoned and stretched out his right hand wearing the diamond glove. There was a snap. He snapped his fingers. Chapter 1706. At that moment, the immense power that erupted from the diamond gloves was eye-catching. The man snapped his fingers for the first time. The meteorite that was about to fall from the sky instantly exploded with a loud bang. It actually exploded on the spot, and cracks appeared on it. But the lethality of the diamond gloves was far more than that. The man snapped his fingers a second time, and the power increased exponentially. After the second snap, the interior of the meteorite instantly disintegrated, as if it had been annihilated by a powerful energy. The moment it was about to fall, it gradually shrank until it turned into flying ash. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei couldn't react for a moment. Supreme God Chaos Object. Indestructible Diamond Gloves. Sequence Level 3. Annihilation. They never expected to witness a chaos artifact with a concentration of more than 60%, which was classified as a Supreme God Chaos Artifact. When a chaos artifact's concentration exceeded 60%, the universe's chaos would automatically assign it to a sequence, which was equivalent to adding a layer of nomological laws. Take the Heartless Ancestors Chaos Ship as an example, which had reached Level 1, transcending mortality. Taking Wang Ling's Great Universe Chaos Millstone as an example, it was Level 3, Annihilation. Only chaos artifacts with a concentration of more than 60% would be assigned this sequence. Sequence Level 1, Transcending Mortality Sequence Level 2, Supreme God Sequence Level 3, Annihilation Sequence Level 4, Light Sequence Level 5. Creation after being assigned to a sequence, it didn't have much to do with its specific concentration of chaos. The existence of a sequence itself was a symbol of a chaos artifact's development potential. At the same time, it was a symbol of a special ability. Rumor had it that a chaos artifact that had reached the annihilation level might have a concentration of more than 100% in the future, toward an even higher and more terrifying concentration. It could lock onto the object it wanted to annihilate, actively track it, and open up a chaos opening from within, achieving complete annihilation from the inside out. An annihilation sequence chaos artifact. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei were stupefied. Although the concentration of chaos in this diamond gloves wasn't as high as Wang Ling's Great Universe Millstone, they could clearly sense that this was an Annihilation Chaos artifact, and that it had reached level 3. This person isn't an ordinary person either. He can withstand the backlash of a chaos artifact like this with such ease. Li Xian's heart trembled. This was what he was most afraid of. This man in a khaki windbreaker wore gloves expressionlessly and snapped his fingers. It was as if he didn't care about anything in the world. After dealing with Li Xian's meteorite, the next second, he focused his attention on Li Xian and Zhang Zipei and extended his hand. The diamond glove on his right hand rubbed his thumb and middle finger together, producing a slight friction, and the crisp sound of fingers snapping followed. Pa! And this time, his target was Li Xian. A powerful wave of primal chaos surged towards Li Xian's body. He felt that a hole had appeared in his body, for which an endless amount of primal chaos energy was being nurtured. Then, with a bang, his chest exploded on the spot. Along with fresh blood, countless organs flew out from a wound and were gradually devoured by the chaotic force. Li Xian's and Zhang Ziti's physical bodies were illusions created by the king's eye. Even if they were badly damaged, they wouldn't feel any pain. However, the destructive power brought by the snap of the fingers affected their souls at the same time. In an instant, Li Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. "Let's go, brother Ziti. Take Miss Jai away from here. If you want to leave, let's go together." Zhang Ziti didn't expect this man in a khaki windbreaker to be so brave that he almost killed Li Xian with a snap of his fingers. Li Xian's soul had been seriously injured, and he probably couldn't withstand a second snap of the fingers. Right at this moment, another meteor flew towards them from behind. This was a soft meteor, like a sponge. It didn't have any killing power, and it was summoned by Li Xian with the last of his strength. It came from behind them at an incredible speed, sweeping all three of them away. Zhang Ziti grasped the situation and immediately opened up a space tunnel. In just an instant, the three of them were taken away by this soft meteorite and disappeared without a trace. They can't run away. At this moment, the man in a khaki windbreaker took off his diamond glove and put it back into his windbreaker. His short hair fluttered elegantly, and yellow lightning crackled. Then, on the left and right sides of his forehead, 2 golden dragon horns appeared. "Jingza, wait a moment. They're just an arrow at the end of its flight. There's no need to chase after them." Wu Xin called his name and stopped him. "SCBX L001. Jingza Dragon Descendant Age. 1-year-old dragon's power. Lightning Dragon Breath Attribute. Electricity Current Actual Combat Strength Conversion Realm. Mid-stage Earth Ancestor Dragon Strength Synchronization Data. Stable Dragon Breath Purity Data. Stable." He checked the man's physical condition and found that he was as stable as ever. He let out a long sigh of relief and sighed inwardly. When he first saw Bai Zhe and the Tomb God plotting behind the scenes, he felt that these two were the people he could rely on and cooperate with. For the Dragon Clan that had already disappeared to be resurrected in such a way, turning them into humanoid dragon descendants that could control the power of the Dragon Clan. Moreover, they could completely listen to their commands. This matter was inconceivable to Wu Xin, but Bai Zhe and the Tomb God had done it with their own strength. In the future, more intact dragon bones would be excavated from this dragon graveyard which floated in the air, and genes could be extracted from the remnants of the dragon breath in these bones to breed even more dragon descendants like this man, called Jingza, in front of him. That dead fish-eyed teenager from Earth was too strong. Choosing to resurrect the dragons of the past to fight him was indeed the best choice at the moment. Currently, Bao Bai Group had 8 dragon descendants in the process of being synthesized, and 4 had succeeded. 2 of them were engaged in combat. Jingza was the one who had been synthesized for the longest time and was also the most stable. 1 year old for a dragon was equivalent to 1,000 years old for a human cultivator. There were many places where dragon descendants could be bred. After the synthesis and hatching were completed, the main thing was to speed up the breeding process in a custom-made space with the time difference between inside and outside. Jingza You have to remember that you're the first dragon descendant in this universe. As number 001, you're responsible for leading the dragon descendants after you to achieve the revival of the dragon race. Do you understand? Wu Xin said in Wang Ming's body. Yes. Jingza nodded. Very good. Now it's time to introduce you to SCBX L002. Wu Xin said. He had just received instructions from Bai Zhe to find Jingza a partner. SCBX L002. Jingza tilted his head. I don't think I want a partner. Heh, you won't say that when you see it. Patriarch Wu Xin smiled. This is a girl who obtained the dragon strength of an exploding flame dragon. The combination of electricity and fire will multiply the lethality. If you work well together, no one in this world will be able to defeat you. Then, I'll assign you a mission to build tacit understanding. Kill someone. Sir, please tell me who you want to kill. Jingza asked obediently. A monk. Wu Xin smiled and replied. His Buddhist name is Golden Lamp. Chapter 1707. The key has been confirmed. Unlocking the specific containment space channel for SCB L002. When the familiar electronic voice rang in Jingza's ear, Wu Xin took him to the specific containment space for SCB L002. This was a special space that Baizha had provided for all the noble dragon descendants. Each space was an independent core world and didn't have the oppressive feeling of being comfortably cooped up in a cube container at all. Wu Xin himself hadn't expected this kind of improvement. Back then, he had imprisoned those host creatures in those cube containers, but he hadn't expected that some of them would become even more brutal after being trapped inside. For Wu Xin, the scene in front of him also made him reflect on the past. But no ordinary person would be able to spend so much money on a dragon descendant in an inner world. For a normal cultivator, the process of nurturing an intrinsic spirit field was full of hardships and obstacles. Expanding from an intrinsic spirit field to a big or small world, and then to a higher world, the passage of time was bound to go through the vicissitudes of time. Not to mention nurturing an inner space to the level of a supreme world. It would take thousands or even tens of thousands of years to nurture an inner world. But now, Baizha had given the core world to every dragon descendant for free, as if he was laying eggs. This kind of extravagance was truly shocking. This was a high-temperature inner world, and the core temperature in the deep regions was over 70 degrees C. Wang Ming's body was just a mortal, and it was impossible for him to withstand this kind of heat. Fortunately, Patriarch Wu Xin was already prepared. He was wearing a modified defensive suit, which allowed him to walk unimpeded on this piece of land by relying on the black technology he had created. Next to him, Jingza felt nothing the entire time. There was no way this kind of temperature could harm a dragon descendant who had already stabilized and was almost fully developed. The two of them approached the core area one after the other. In front of a huge flame explosion waterfall, lava at a temperature of over 10,000 degrees fell from above with a resounding roar. Wu Xin, I brought your partner with me. Look, I've also prepared your favorite thing, Wu Xin said as he stood at the mouth of the slightly hot shore. Then he took out a special blue box from his storage space. The box exuded a frightening chill. Jing Zhe thought it might contain some magic weapon, but when he unbuttoned it and opened it, he was dumbfounded. Inside the box, there were all kinds of ice creams. There were colorful ice cream cones, sundaes with strawberry jam, and crystal-clear durian popsicles with alluring colors. These desserts were protected by special boxes and did not melt even in such a hot environment. No one knew if she was startled by Wu Xian's words or attracted by these desserts, but not long after, under the waterfall of exploding flames, a girl with light blonde hair finally revealed the upper half of her face. She tried to take a look, then gradually revealed her entire body. The girl named Yen Ruo was wearing a red lace dress and had an exquisite doll-like face. Jingza was stunned when he saw her. Soon, a string of data related to anorexia was synchronized to his smart goggles. SCB L002. Anorexia Dragon Age, 7 months Dragon Power, Explosive Flame Dragon Breath Attribute, Fire Current Actual Combat Level, Early Stage Earth Ancestor Exclusive Dragon Chaos Weapon, Sky Burning Chain Hammer. Chain Hammer? Jing Zhe was a little confused about the weapon used by Yin Ruo. He did not expect such a small girl to be able to wield a weapon that did not match her size and specifications at all. Like your diamond glove, Yin Ruo's Sky-Burning Chain Hammer is made from dragon bones that correspond to your dragon power and chaos. It is an exclusive chaos weapon for dragon descendants. The Dragon Descendant Chaos tool on each of you is unique. It has more potential than those that were born directly from chaos, Wu Xin said. So, what is the level of her Dragon Descendant's chaos weapon? Well, the concentration of chaos is not as high as yours, only 61%, but it has reached Sequence 4. Sequence 4? Jing Zhe's calm face finally showed a look of surprise. The sequence level of the chaos weapon represented the future potential of the chaos weapon. He was originally very satisfied with his Sequence 3 diamond glove, which was Annihilation level. But after hearing the sequence level of the chaos weapon used by Yin Ruo, he instantly felt that his diamond glove was not as good. A dragon was more powerful than a dragon. But after thinking about it carefully, Jing Zhe did not feel that it was that unfair, because the diamond glove was not the only chaos weapon he had. In fact, he had a black umbrella that had not been used yet. So far, among all the dragon descendants, Jing Zhe was the only one who was born with a twin dragon descendant chaos device. This special characteristic was also one of the reasons why Bai Zhe and the others valued Jing Zhe so much. The baby-faced, light blonde girl in a little red dress looked up at Jing Zhe lazily, then squatted beside the blue box and began to eat the desserts. Ice cream was her favorite. Yin Ruo, I brought your partner here, Wu Xian said at this moment. Yin Ruo scooped a strawberry sundae in her mouth, but her expression was a little dissatisfied. But I want a guy that uses ice. She had already sent feedback to Bai Zhe several times, hoping to find a dragon with ice attributes as a partner, but this request had always been rejected. The main reason was that the attributes restrained each other. If they really combined, the lethality would be greatly reduced. Yin Ruo, I'll be good. If you follow Jing Zhe, you can eat as much ice cream as you want in the future. He is very rich, Wu Xian said. Really? The girl looked at Jing Zhe doubtfully. To be honest, she still did not have a good impression of this man in a khaki trench coat. But for the sake of an endless supply of ice cream, she could still endure this little bit. Finally, she nodded. All right then. That's right, Yin Ruo. Wu Xian encouraged her. Next, you will carry out a mission together. You need to get rid of a very bad monk. How bad? He likes to eat hot pot, and he often burns hot pot on his head. But I hate hot pot the most. Yin Ruo suddenly became angry. He will definitely die. At this moment, Jing Zhe silently sighed. He did not know if it was right to lead Yin Ruo in this way, but he had to admit that this kind of ignorant girl was indeed easy to deceive. Elsewhere, Zhang Ziqing quickly took Li Xian and Jia Yin back to Battle Sect for help. Jia Yin's condition was okay, but Li Xian's injuries were really serious, and he spat out several mouthfuls of blood on the way back. The destructive power of the Annihilation Grade Diamond Gloves had already injured his soul. Given Li Xian's realm, it wouldn't be enough to kill him, but it was already rare for an ancient being to suffer such serious injuries. On his way to Battle Sect, he had already notified the core group, and as soon as he arrived at the mountain entrance, Immortal Toya, Talion Jinren, and Monk Golden Lamp were already there to greet him. How could his injuries be so serious? There's no time to explain, Monk. Let's talk as we go. Carrying Li Xian on his back, Zhang Ziqing was extremely anxious and regretful. He regretted acting on Li Xian's own will and going deep into the enemy's heart without any prior warning. And he had never expected to suffer such a backlash. Of course, Li Xian's injuries might not have been the most critical situation earlier. There was also Wang Ming, who had already been completely manipulated in the airboat. Chapter 1708. We did our best. About half an hour later, Immortal Toya, Silent Jinren, and Monk Jean Deng walked out of Battle Sec's sterile operating room with regretful expressions. Immortal Toya took off his mask and gloves as he spoke, leaving Zhang Zipei a little dazed. What people were most afraid of was hearing a doctor say this. Zhang Zipei lowered his head, his body trembling slightly. He had been too confident. Even if Wang Ming had proposed a plan back then, as a senior, he should have stopped him and not acted so arbitrarily. Just as tears were about to seep out of the corners of his eyes, Immortal Toya added, "As for the damage to his soul, we'll have to ask Ling Jinren for help later." Not dead? Zhang Zipei's tears immediately stopped, and he jerked his head up. "As long as I'm here, of course I can't let Senior Li Xian die, just like that," said Immortal Toya. "Then I'll have to trouble you to say everything in one go next time. It's my fault." Immortal Toya smiled bitterly. "Miss Xiaoyin is fine. I gave her a hibernation pill so that she can rest longer. If she wakes up and finds out what happened to Mr. Xiaoming, she'll definitely break down. That's all we can do." Zhang Zipei nodded and couldn't help sighing at the same time. He had never been in such a sorry state before. The last time he had cried was a long time ago. Furthermore, the last time he had cried was because Dao Ancestor Wang had beaten him up. But there was no point in being sad now. The key was how to remedy the situation. The current situation was worse than he had imagined. Li Xian was seriously injured, and Wang Ming had been directly manipulated. Since the establishment of Battle Sect, there hadn't been a worse situation. That man in the khaki trench coat had actually only snapped his fingers twice to injure Li Xian to this extent. It could be said that this was far beyond Zhang Zipei's expectations. Based on the information Zhang Zipei had provided so far, Jean Deng had more or less guessed what had happened. "It seems you've already been to Myriad Dragon Mountain. That was a dragon graveyard from ancient times, and the remains of many dragons are buried there," said Monk Jean Deng. Monk Jean Deng said, "Although I don't know what means they used from what Brother Ziti said, the man in the khaki trench coat may be a dragon descendant who has inherited the power of the ancient dragons. But the dragon clan is clearly extinct." Hearing this, Zhang Zizai felt that it was unbelievable. Even to many ancient beings like Zhang Zidin, the dragon race was an absolute legend. It was a powerful cosmic race that had once dominated an era with the Great Old Ones, but had perished before the Great Old Ones. If we can piece together the complete dragon remains, there may be a way to condense the dragon soul from the remnant dragon breath with supreme magic power, and then use genetic technology to create these human dragon descendants. Jean Deng frowned and said, he knew that this was not the most troublesome thing. Although Zhang Ziqin had only met one of the dragon descendants, this matter had clearly been planned for a long time. The number of dragon descendants behind this was probably far more than this, of course. The most troublesome problem was that the other party had a chaos weapon with more than 60% chaos concentration and a powerful sequence. It wasn't difficult for Tyrant to guess that these powerful dragon descendant chaos tools were probably refined from dragon bones. It was equivalent to throwing one's natal magic treasure into the chaos to refine it into a custom-made magic treasure. The strength of these magic treasures was much stronger than the magic treasures produced from the chaos. At this thought, Monk Jean Deng couldn't help feeling a little afraid. The only thing he was glad about was that he had already helped Lotus Sun upgrade her Mysterious C to 9 cores in advance. With 9 cores of Mysterious C, even if these dragon descendants came looking for trouble, Lotus Sun would now be able to protect herself. At that moment, Jean Deng pinched his fingers together to calculate, and the expression on his face was unprecedentedly serious. The world is going to change. He only said 4 words, and everyone present instantly fell silent. They felt an unprecedented pressure. "We must report this matter to Ling Jinren and Senior Immortal as soon as possible. Everyone must be on guard against a sneak attack by the dragon descendants." These words dissipated into the air along with Monk Jean Deng's figure, which had turned into a cool breeze. Although he didn't say much, everyone knew that there was going to be a tough battle ahead. Boundless Buddhist Court. This was the supreme world which had been opened up by the first generation of the supreme Buddhist scriptures, and now it had been directly passed down to monk Jin Deng. At that moment, he was sitting on a huge golden lotus platform. Endless seven-colored Buddhist light pierced through the auspicious clouds above and enveloped the land. Every scene here was filled with the solemn power of Buddhist Dharma, and there was something indescribably astonishing about it. Behind monk Jin Deng was a golden Sakyamuni Dharma idol that was thousands of meters tall, which was also one of the most solemn symbols of boundless Buddhist court. Since the first generation of the supreme Buddhist scriptures, boundless Buddhist court had been the culmination of the divine power of dozens of eminent monks who had accumulated profound Buddhist Dharma. Jin Deng hadn't wanted to disturb this pure Buddhist land at first, but the situation was urgent, and he had no choice but to come here to guard against it. He had long since guessed that he had been targeted by the dragon descendants, so he had come here early to prepare for battle. It was just that the situation in front of him was beyond his expectations, because there were actually two dragon descendants here. When the seven-colored auspicious clouds in the sky were blasted out of a black hole by an extremely powerful dragon breath, he took a deep breath, knowing that the battle was about to begin. It hadn't been a long time since he came to boundless Buddhist court, but these two dragon descendants could actually penetrate the layers of the void and directly enter the supreme world of others without fear. Such combat power was really frightening. Yen, be careful. This monk is not a simple character. Jingzhe was still wearing that trench coat and carrying a black umbrella on his back. From afar, the two looked very much like a pair of father and daughter, with the most adorable height difference. Monk Jin Deng opened his eyes. To him, the Dragon Clan was just a legendary existence. Even for him, it was the first time he had felt such a giant dragon power, so he didn't dare to slack off. After these two dragon descendants landed in boundless Buddhist court, although they didn't do anything except hold hands and say a few words, Jin Deng had already sensed great danger from them. He could even see the giant dragon Dharma behind the two of them. It was a gigantic, orange-yellow giant dragon that was tens of thousands of meters long, and its entire body was crackling with lightning. There was also a slightly smaller flame dragon that was spitting lava from its mouth, and its entire body was crimson like the Great Wall as it twisted its body in the air. The two dragons met, and under the interweaving of lightning and fire, there was a powerful momentum that could dominate the world and look down on the universe. You're that monk who likes to eat hot pot. At this moment, Yen opened her mouth, and her soft and cute voice formed a sharp contrast with the powerful Dharma behind her. There was a strong sense of contrast. She stared at Jin Deng, and after stuffing all the ice cream in her hand into her mouth, a murderous intent instantly surged in her eyes. Then, are you ready to die? The next moment, there was a buzzing sound. She broke free from Jingzhe's hand and leaped out. Her speed was unbelievably fast, and her agile body dragged a long trail of fire as she attacked from afar. She didn't hold back at all, and the moment she got close to Jin Deng, her arm had already turned into a giant dragon claw, slashing at Jin Deng's heart. Chapter 1709. Boom! Suddenly, the infinite Buddhist court trembled, the earth quaked, and the mountains swayed. The golden Buddha's aura that shrouded this supreme world was impacted by the crimson dragon breath, and the colorful, auspicious clouds in the sky instantly dispersed. Jin Deng was secretly shocked. She was just a descendant of a dragon synthesized from the genes of a giant dragon, and the power she possessed was far less than the real power of a giant dragon in the early immemorial era. However, the power she could erupt with could reach such a level, which inevitably made Jin Deng feel surprised. The dragon claw solidly hid a layer of eggshell-shaped, protective Buddha's aura. The little girl with a baby face did not penetrate Jin Deng's armor, but still left the mark of her dragon ball on the protective Buddha's aura. Crack! The protective Buddha's aura quickly cracked along the dragon claw mark. The descendant of the dragon in front of him was clearly in his supreme world, but she was still unaffected by the suppression of the power of the world and could erupt with such power, which was really terrifying. No wonder Li Xian was seriously injured. Moreover, Jin Deng could see that Yan's fighting strength was actually not as good as the man in the khaki trench coat who was standing behind her and watching from a distance. It was this man who injured Li Xian. This was the first time Jin Deng had fought with a dragon. Although the two descendants of the dragon in front of him could not be called a real giant dragon, the significance and value of this battle was undoubtedly huge in the monk's view. At least it could give him the experience of fighting with the dragon in this life. He did not dare to be careless. Even in his own supreme world, he did not dare to do so. The early immemorial era was the era when the dragon race was in its heyday, and its resounding name had been passed down from ancient times to the present. If it had not been for unknown reasons suffering a disaster, if the giant dragons of the Myriad Dragon Mountain had taken action, they could have beaten the leaders of the outer gods among the old rulers. Then, it's time for this poor monk to make his move. Buzz! The Buddha's aura steamed and gushed out from every pore of Jin Deng's body. Vaguely, the golden statue of Gautama Buddha behind him also soared. All the scenes in the infinite Buddhist court that had been disturbed by the dragon breath were restored, and the original magnificence was restored. The sound of Sanskrit lingered in all directions, forming an encirclement. What a strong chi! This monk is really not easy to deal with. Jingzhe was shocked. His scalp immediately turned cold as he felt this was inconceivable. He and Yin were both descendants of dragons, the embodiment of the giant dragon's inheritance at the beginning of the immemorial era. They knew the way of power. Naturally, he also knew how difficult it was for a cultivator to reach the level of the monk. Therefore, in the face of the monk's superhuman strength, Jingzhe's originally relaxed spirit gradually became tense. He clearly knew that this was a test. This was a tough battle, but no matter how difficult it was to deal with the monk, he and Yin had to defeat the monk in front of them. Yin, you can't deal with this monk alone. We need to join forces, Jingzhe said coldly. He had already put on his diamond gloves and was about to attack. Boom! Jin Deng raised his hand, and the golden Buddhist light in the sky instantly transformed into a Buddhist palm that was 100 miles wide, rushing toward the lake with an unstoppable force. A palm technique descending from the sky. Jingzhe frowned. The monk's movements were too fast. Just by sitting there, he was able to use the golden Buddha light that filled the sky of the boundless Buddhist court. A precise long-range attack. This was the performance of using the supreme world to the extreme. It could be said that at this time, the monk and the supreme world were inseparable. The two were one and could be used by each other. He took a deep breath and puffed up her little belly. Then, with a whooshing sound, a long dragon-shaped fire pillar gushed out of her mouth. This time, the pillar of fire accurately hit monk Jin Deng's body. However, at the moment when the flames burned the monk, his body instantly turned illusory, turning into a 7-colored cloud and fading away. After the flames disappeared, the part of his body that had disappeared returned to his original body. This is illusory and real coexist. In the distance, Jingzhe broke away from the palm technique, descending from the sky, turned into lightning, and quickly brought Yin back to his side. He couldn't let Yin do this kind of useless work anymore. Every step from now on had to be done carefully. This monk was not easy to deal with, and it was useless to just bite the bullet. Although the dragon's spiritual power was as vast as the sea, it was not inexhaustible. After all, one was only 1 year old, and the other was only 7 months old. Jingzhe didn't have the confidence to compete with the monk with profound cultivation. Compared with Jin Deng, the dragon's only advantage was their bloodline. It could be seen that Jingzhe was very cautious. Even though he was very strong, he didn't act rashly. He's not easy to deal with. Jin Deng opened his eyes, and the word swastika appeared in his pupils. It had been a long time since he had used the swastika. The last time he had opened his eyes was to peek into Wang Ling's universe. But in the end, he had only seen a trace of its outline before he had been blinded in one eye. Fortunately, he had later comprehended the 3 great Buddha fires of the past present, and future, and had used the power of the Buddha fire to repair the broken swastika. Now that he had used the swastika again, he would be dealing with 2 dragon descendants. He had enough confidence. This time, his swastika wouldn't be scrapped. Swish! Taking the descendant of Yin with him, Jingzai left after images on the spot. When he steadied himself, he sensed the monk's terrifying swastika eye power from a distance. Yin, listen to me. We're going to use our dragon descendant's chaos weapons. Otherwise, we won't be this monk's match, Jingzai said. To be honest, before coming here, he had never expected Jin Deng to be so difficult to deal with. But now that Jin Deng had used the swastika, Jingzai instantly recognized the truth. There was no way they could defeat this monk with their current battle strength. They could only use the dragon descendant's chaos weapons and look for an opportunity. Swoosh! At that moment, a powerful golden light seeped out of the swastika, and with an aura that could purify everything, it pounced on Jingzai and Yin. Hello, everyone. We'll find gold and coin red envelopes every day on our official account. You can receive them as long as you follow us. This is the last benefit at the end of the year. Please seize this opportunity. Official account, then. Jingzai saw the swastika in the monk's pupils spin, and dozens of golden objects were summoned in a flash. They hovered around him. These golden objects were identical in shape and emitted golden light. Each of them was carved with a different pattern of a Buddha's head. Some had benevolent faces, some looked fierce, some looked gentle, and some looked furious. These were 88 Suravajra scepters, refined from the most sacred Buddhist relics of past generations. At that moment, all 88 Vajra scepters appeared behind Jin Deng. The scepter head spun and aimed at Jingzai and Yin. In an instant, a Buddhist hall seemed to appear behind Jin Deng. Countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appeared. It was so shocking that it was indescribable. What kind of formidable power was this? It was hard for Jingzai to imagine that a mortal could cultivate to such a level. And what made Jingzai afraid the most was that the monk in front of him had attacked with all his strength without considering any backup plans. At that moment, his gaze was fixed. The 88 Suravajra scepters behind him shot at them like missiles. This monk, Jingzai, was speechless. He was speechless about Jin Deng. Didn't they say that monks should be compassionate? It was all a lie. They were just 2 one-year-old and 7-month-old dragon descendants. How could 2 little dragonborn babies have any bad intentions? Chapter 17:10. 88 Vajras were as powerful as missiles with explosive destructive power. They flew all over the sky and turned into golden streamers, dragging long air behind them. Jingzai knew that this was the purifying Buddha's light that came with the Vajra. If ordinary people touched it, they would immediately have the idea of becoming a Buddha and abandon all distracting thoughts. There was only peace and no war in their hearts. If there were only 1 or a few Vajras, Inyan might be able to deal with it. However, the power of the purifying Buddha's light was greatly multiplied by 88 Vajras. If they were hit, the result would be hard to say. These Vajra scepters were all refined from the holy Sariras of past Buddhist paragon sages. They were imbued with extraordinary powers and had extraordinary effects. Purifying Buddhist light was also the base of every Buddhist spell. After all, Buddhists emphasize compassion. The existence of purifying Buddhist light was to wear down one's will to fight, so that one would be shrouded in Buddhist light until one had no temper to speak of. Of course, Jingzai would not let the golden lamp do as it wished. He guarded Yenrua cautiously behind him and quickly locked his aura on the Vajra, flying in front of him. Devouring heavenly stars, Jingzai shouted. With a snap, a familiar finger snap came from the diamond glove on Jingzai's hand. He locked his aura on multiple Vajra, flying toward him at the same time, and snapped his fingers to detonate them. Stars suddenly appeared in the void, and then there was a loud explosion. A chaotic aura was generated from inside the Vajra, and then directly exploded, blowing up more than a dozen Vajra on the spot. However, there were too many Vajra. Jingzhe was unable to clear all the Vajra in a short time when they took turns to cover each other. Monk's face was as calm as an ancient well, and his eyes fell lightly on the diamond glove on Jingzhe's hand. The exclusive dragon descendant chaos device was indeed extraordinary. If it weren't for the number advantage on his side, his Vajra would have been neutralized with a few snaps of his fingers. This was the power of a third-level sequence, Annihilation-grade chaos device. However, it was not completely without shortcomings. The diamond glove was unparalleled in power, but it could not attack in a wide range. It was a type of magic weapon for precise attacks. When Jingzhe took out the diamond glove, Monk had been on guard. This was the glove that had sent Li Xian into the intensive care unit with 2 snaps of his fingers. It was impossible for him not to be on guard. In the case of precaution, the effect of the diamond gloves on the golden lamp was not that great, because he'd long since become one with the boundless Buddhist court. If they wanted to destroy him, they would have to destroy this supreme world as well. This supreme world, called the Amateus Buddhist court, was a pure land of bliss created by generations of Buddhist sages using their own cultivation. How could it be destroyed so easily? Jingzhe felt that his diamond gloves were about to burst into flames. However, facing the 88 Vajra pestles that were about to attack him, even though he had already dealt with some of them, the efficiency of using the diamond gloves to deal with them was too low. At this moment, he felt the earth and mountains behind him shaking. The depths of this golden pure land of ultimate bliss began to riot, and the sound of a huge flood could be heard. Endless boiling lava overflowed from the surface and poured out in torrents. "Monk, don't bully him," Yin Ruo shouted. Tyrant was stunned by the scene. The power of the dragon descendant was much stronger than he had imagined. He could actually change the structure of the environment in the supreme world of others and create a terrain that was beneficial to him. This was difficult for an ordinary cultivator to do. Moreover, because Tyrant had already activated the swastika, he was sure that this was not an illusion, but a real red tide. Monstrous red lava spewed out from the ground with an amazing power and murderous aura, just like the scene in the movie The Shining where endless blood gushed out from the crack of the door. And in this monstrous lava, Tyrant heard the clanking sound of iron chains. A crimson iron hammer that was completely disproportionate to Yin Ruo's eyes was pulled out of the lava by Yin Ruo. The back of the iron hammer was connected to a chain made of lava. It was hard to imagine that such a huge object was actually a dragon descendant chaos artifact of such a little girl. Sky-burning chain hammer, the ultimate artifact of light that had reached the 4th level of the chaotic sequence. Previously, Wuxin had mentioned it to Jingzhe, but when he saw such a light artifact being taken out by Yin Ruo, he still felt that it was unreal. Boom! A large area of fire erupted from the ground of Amitabha Buddhist court. In his eyes, countless virtual images of fire creatures appeared behind him. Firebirds, fire horses, fire leopards. The densely packed fire creatures filled the horizon, running forward to kill. They were completely unafraid of death and rushed towards the remaining Vajra scepters. The number of these thousands of soldiers and horses far exceeded Tyrant's Vajra scepter. In an instant, an area of Amitabha Buddhist court turned into a sea of fire. The purification light of the Vajra scepter was limited to competing with these fire creatures before it even got close to its destination. The power of purification turned these magma creatures summoned by the sky-burning chain hammer into bubbles and steam. However, there were too many of these creatures. While Tyrant's Vajra scepter was delayed, Jingzhe's fingers snapping didn't stop. Not long after, all 88 Vajra scepters were destroyed. It's a chaos artifact of the light sequence. This sky-burning chain hammer was beyond Tyrant's expectations. He never expected that this seemingly weak little girl would have such a chaos artifact that had reached the 4th level. Boom! Several gorillas burning with flames rushed over. They could be as tall as 10 feet. Their bodies were agile, and they attacked from behind in an attempt to sneak attack Tyrant. Jin Deng didn't even look at them. He just silently chanted Buddhist scriptures with his palms together. A golden light spread out in all directions from the lotus he was sitting on. In an instant, these flame gorillas were shaken to ashes. At the same time, this was also Tyrant's clearing of the area, trying to restore order to the supreme world. A large area of the sea of fire dissipated, but there was still a small area burning with flames. This surprised Tyrant. He had never seen a chaos artifact of the light sequence. Now that he saw it in the hands of a dragon, he was at a loss. It could only be said that the chaos artifact of the light sequence was too domineering. It was like a ray of light that couldn't be dispersed. As long as it shone on a part of the world, it would never dissipate. At this moment, Jin Deng closed his eyes. Things had developed to this point. Other than using 100% of his strength, it seemed that it wasn't enough. He had to take out some trump cards to respond. Buzz. The next moment, 3 Buddha fires of the past, present, and future appeared. They lingered around Jin Deng. This was something he had obtained through the epiphany of reincarnation. It was also one of the strongest trump cards in his hands. He just didn't know whether it was stronger or weaker than this light artifact. The sea of bitterness knows no bounds. Repent, and you'll be saved. Before activating the Buddha fire, he transmitted his voice in the supreme world, giving a final warning to the 2 dragon descendants, Yen Ruo and Jing Zhe. Chapter 17:11. The light of Buddha blazed and instantly filled the entire supreme world. It turned out that Jing Zhe had still underestimated the monk's combat power. In the long river of history, there had never been a person among the Buddhist sages who could gather the past, present, and future Buddhist fires into one. His heart trembled, and he didn't dare be careless anymore. Like Yen Ruo, he maintained a solemn and vigilant expression. Monk Jin Deng sat on a Buddha lotus, the 3 Buddha fires circling around him in an incomparably solemn and dignified manner. At the same time, the illusory images of Buddhas that filled the sky appeared behind him like a mirage, and they all inadvertently stared at Jing Zhe and Yen Ruo in front of them. Monk, is this all you've got? Jing Zhe opened his mouth. He hadn't moved, but Jin Deng was surprised. He had thought that apart from Wang Ling and Wang Wan, there was almost no one else in the world who could speak or move under the gaze of all the Buddhas in the Boundless Buddhist court. This was already the ultimate pressure brought on by the entire Boundless Buddhist court. He hadn't expected the dragon descendant in front of him to be able to withstand it. After a brief moment of surprise, Jin Deng began to lecture again. The eternal dragon clan once commanded the universe, and was the strongest existence in the universe. It seems that you're not muddle-headed, monk. You know how strong we are. Jing Zhe sneered and crossed his arms. Yen Ruo and I haven't inherited 100% of the dragon's power. We've only activated 50% of it. If we had 100%, I could deal with you on my own. Winning or losing isn't the key. What this humble monk wants to tell you is, as the descendants of the eternal dragon clan, does it feel good to live under someone else's roof and be enslaved? The monk said, live under someone else's roof? Jing Zhe laughed again. We, the dragon descendants, have never felt like living under someone else's roof. We're just using each other. In fact, he had a contract with Yen Ruo, and his current relationship with Bai Zhe was indeed just an employer-employee relationship with Bao Bai Group. Bai Zhe was naturally well aware of this. Since they were the heirs of the dragon clan, it wouldn't be easy to completely enslave them. Thus, the best way was to sign an employer-employee relationship, with the restoration of the dragon clan as a prerequisite. Before the dragon clan was completely revived, the resurrected dragon descendants would become his workers. This was Bai Zhe's original plan. For the resurrected dragon descendants, they had to learn a lot of modern knowledge, and to survive in the modern cultivation society, it was necessary to be affiliated with a modern enterprise. Therefore, in Jing Zhe's opinion, there was no enslavement at all. All the dragon descendants were treated extremely well in Bao Bai. There was no overtime, number 996, and they would not die suddenly because their leaders worked overtime. In fact, every awakened dragon descendant could even get their own core world as a fief. In Jingzai's opinion, such treatment was very fair. What they needed to do was to kill a few people in their spare time. The dragon race was good at fighting. Such an attribute was engraved in their bones. Naturally, it would not disappear. There are many paths to choose from. You don't necessarily have to choose this path. The golden lamp monk sat on the Buddhist lotus and advised earnestly. He had originally tried to persuade the two lost dragon descendants, but he found that they had fallen too deep and seemed to have taken Baijia's side as the truth of the universe. Monk, no matter how much you say, I won't listen to you. Dare I ask, do you have the means to resurrect us brothers and sisters one by one, using only that complete dragon skeleton? No. The monk shook his head and told the truth. Because he really didn't have such a heaven-defying method. Resurrection wasn't his specialty to begin with. After all, his professional skills were consecration, helping people reincarnate, and physical expiation. Hearing this, Jingzai smiled. You can't, but that Mr. Bai can. For us dragon descendants, he is the only truth in this vast universe. But there is more than one path to the truth. Among the people I know, there is also this truth, the monk said in response to what Jingzai had just said. He was already doing his best to hint at Baijia's existence, but it seemed that Jingzai and Yin Feng had already set their sights on Baijia. No matter what he said, the two dragons didn't seem moved. Someone you know? Monk, you're also bragging? Jingzai laughed. A monk doesn't lie. Golden Lamp shook his head and said patiently, You've been deceived too deeply. It's not certain who will be deceived. Everything was as the monk thought. Jingzai didn't believe him at all. As you say, monk, there is more than one truth. There is more than one truth. Killing you is also a truth. The negotiation failed. Golden Lamp sighed darkly. Under the circumstances, there seemed to be no room for negotiation. Boom! The next moment, Jingzai attacked again. He finally pulled out the black umbrella on his back, held it up, and threw it into the air. The black umbrella spun with an unimaginable power as it buzzed and formed a huge black hole in the air. In an instant, all the golden Buddha light in the supreme world was absorbed by the black umbrella in the air. The situation was once again beyond Golden Lamp's expectations. He hadn't expected the black umbrella on Jingzai's back to actually be a Sequence 3 chaos weapon, and its ability to absorb the core world for its own use. In an instant, he could feel the vast and boundless Buddhist court gradually shrinking at an accelerated rate. Monk, you are one with the boundless Buddhist court. If I devour it, you will die for sure, said Jingzai. Originally, he didn't want to expose the black umbrella's ability, but the monk's repeated exhortations had angered him. He believed that the truth he chose couldn't be wrong, and he didn't believe that the dragons were at the mercy of others. They were just carrying out their jobs, and they weren't slaves, as the monk said. The boundless Buddhist court was being nibbled away bit by bit. Jingzai thought that the monk would use the 3 holy Buddha fires he had conjured to resist, but Golden Lamp's next move was far beyond his expectations. Because in front of him, the monk sitting on the Buddha lotus had extinguished the 3 holy Buddha fires. Monk, what are you doing? You know you're no match for me. So you give up resisting? Faced with Golden Lamp's choice, Jingzai was extremely puzzled. He tried to provoke the Golden Lamp, but the monk was still as calm as before. Monk Golden Lamp put his palms together and said in a flat tone, In ancient times, there was a Buddha who cut his flesh to feed the eagle. What's my boundless Buddhist court? If this penniless monk's death can allow the two of you to find the true truth, then this penniless monk can die without regrets. Monk, resist for me. Resist. I don't want you to lose to me like this. You're humiliating me, roared Jingzai. But once the god-devouring umbrella was opened, even he couldn't stop it. Seeing the boundless Buddhist court gradually being nibbled away, Jingzai felt very uncomfortable. He had wanted a fierce battle to gain experience, but seeing Golden Lamp not resist at the end of the battle and let him nibble away at it, this was a great humiliation for the warlike dragon clan. An unprecedented humiliation. At the last moment before the boundless Buddhist court was nibbled away by the god-devouring umbrella, Monk Golden Lamp looked up and told Jing Zhe one last thing. My ancestral king token will give you the answer. A Buddha called Wang Ling? Hearing this, Jing Zhe was instantly stunned. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.